Greetings, this is Obi-Wan Kenobi, and I have drifted into the underworld. The Star Wars underworld. I have a bad feeling about this.
Here we go. We must go to the lower levels. The underworld.
You've taken your first step into a larger world.
You're after something.
Ben.
Since I've started the underworld, I've met so many great friends.
Chris.
I grew up in the 1990s, and mall packaging is nostalgic for me.
Dominic.
What I love most about Star Wars is that it's fun, and it's all-round good times.
So, this is where the fun begins.
May the Force be with us.
This thing really moves!
Whoa! I like this!
I can't believe you came all this way to see me.
Hello, everyone. What's up, Star Wars fans? Welcome back to another episode of the Star Wars Underworld podcast. We are your source for the latest breaking Star Wars news and discussion, as always. And this week on the show, we're going to be talking about some exciting updates and rumors from the Obi-Wan Kenobi series. And the future looks bright for the High Republic. We're going to be finally, as well, reading and responding to your listener feedback, all that and so much more on this episode. My name is Chris, and joining me is my good friend, Mr. Dominic Jones.
Hello, Chris. Hello, Ben. Hello, everybody. Yeah, it's the episode that we've been putting off for 6 or 7 weeks now because there's been too much else going on. The long-awaited listener feedback episode. I'm so excited to dive into these. Some of them are a little bit may feel a little bit dated, but they're still very interesting, very exciting to read through because. We have a very smart audience. We have a very smart and insightful audience who have great observations about the Star Wars universe. I'm looking forward to getting into that, getting into all those Book of Boba Fett thoughts that you've all had and your thoughts on all the other cool things that are going on in Star Wars. It's going to be a great show.
Heck yes. And also joining us, it's Ben Hart, the Star Wars guy.
How's it going, everybody? Yeah, it's gonna be a wild night, I think, again, with all kinds of crazy stuff. And yeah, also after 2 years of seemingly promising you we're gonna read your emails, we finally will actually read your emails tonight. Yeah, it's gonna be a lot of fun. Always love to hear from you guys. Even if it is a little late, okay, we'll give you a break because obviously. So yeah, it's gonna be a fun night. Can't wait to get into it.
I love how you're letting you're letting the audience off the hook for us not reading their emails on time.
Well,
it's like
kind of a give or take here. It's kind of a give or take, you know.
We don't blame you. We blame us. I guess we could have done a 4-hour show. We've done them in the past, but those you generally need to then sleep for 16 hours after one of those.
Although never heard of her.
Oh well, maybe we'll get to lots of listener feedback this week because, like we said, there is some really good stuff, and I'm really looking forward to getting into it all.
Heck yes! If you're watching the show on YouTube, make sure that you subscribe. Hit the like button and the notification bell. And if you're not, we do have a video version of our show on YouTube that you can watch by searching the Star Wars Underworld on YouTube. And if you found us on YouTube, but you like listening to podcasts while doing other things, you can also find us on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, and many other podcast catchers. And make sure that you leave a review over there. If you end up subscribing and enjoying the audio-only version of our content. You can support us financially at patreon.com/theswu. That's where you can get some merch as well as get access to our Patreon bonus weekly pre-shows that we do. There was a nice nostalgic trip down memory lane.
Yeah, if you're looking for recaps of classic Arthur episodes... This is the week to sign up for at patreon.com/theswu.
And you can get that for as little as $1 a month. And then also make sure that you check out the other shows on the Culture Slate Network, Star Wars Culture, and Ion Canon. And Cheddar Squadron is back as well with some new episodes. Our good friends, Tyler and Loden over there. Are loading some new content.
Good old Loden.
So check that out. And swunderworld@gmail.com. That is that email for feedback that we will be getting to later.
So that you too can send in an email that will sit in our inbox for 6 months while we promise to do a show next week where we read it.
swunderworld@gmail.com.
All right, so we got a lot of news to get to, and we obviously got the listener feedback to get to. But I want to spring something on you guys right here off the top, because
spring? I'm waiting for spring. It's cold over here.
I got another month to go, but it's now been about 2 weeks since Book of Boba Fett wrapped up, and I thought it might be interesting to look back on the season a little bit by way of looking back on the scores out of 10 that we gave the episodes.
Ooh.
So I did some math.
I'm ready to go.
I did some math. And I've got here our scores and our average score that we gave the episode. I'm curious to see if y'all. I always feel weird when I say y'all. I'm not from the South.
It feels weird for me too.
It sounds weird coming out of my
mouth. In your mouth, literally.
Yeah, literally.
That was in the pre-show.
Yeah,
$1 a month.
So I want to see how you guys feel about the season now compared to how you felt about it as it was coming out. So, Ben, we're going to start with you.
Naturally.
And just to remind everybody, here are the scores that you gave the season. You gave Chapter 1, you gave it a 7 out of 10. Chapter 2, you gave a 9 out of 10. Chapter 3, 8 out of 10. Chapter 4, 9.5 out of 10. Chapter 5, 9 out of 10. Chapter 6, I bullied you into giving it a 10 out of 10.
So is that even a real score? Who knows?
And I did it exclusively so that I could be the only one not to give it 10 out of 10 out of 10. And then Chapter 7, you gave an 8 out of 10 for an average score of 8.64 out of 10. Wow. Now, on the last episode, after having seen the season finale, you also gave a score for the season as a whole. Do you remember what your score was, Ben?
I have no idea.
Well, I will tell you that amongst the three of us, there was the largest discrepancy between your average score and the score you gave the season.
Oh no!
Because again, you gave the season over an 8.5 as an 8.64. That was your average score, but the season as a whole, you gave a 7. For everybody listening, Ben,
no way.
Ben does not believe his own words.
Yeah, I'm just like, I guess it just goes to show, like, because I've talked about this. Okay, shout out to, I talked about this on IPC. I talked about this on Jeff White invited me in High Function. Go listen to that. I talked about it on his show. Like 3 shows in a row, I talked about it. I think I gave varying opinions. If you added all that up, it would probably be even wilder, to be honest.
So I don't know which do you feel though, Ben? Which score would you say or accurately reflects your feeling on the season?
Probably leaning towards an 8. Probably, it depends on like what I'm thinking about. Like if I'm thinking about, man, I really didn't like that, I'll just if I'm just having those kind of thoughts, I'm that kind of mood, that's where it is. But generally speaking, the farther I get away from something, the more I remember the positives of it. So that my opinion generally improves on something the more I think about it in retrospect.
It's
watching it.
It's that thing, absence makes the heart grow fonder in a sense. And it's sort of like when you get to the end of a season and you're in the sort of the heat of the moment where the finale maybe didn't do everything you wanted it to, you give it a little bit of a lower score than you would overall. But then now that we've put some distance in between then and now, you can you're now closer to your average score week to week because you're remembering the whole experience.
Exactly.
As opposed to just what you were feeling after the episode. In a sense, maybe it would be more fair to say your score for Chapter 7, to flip your score for Chapter 7 and your score for the season and give the Chapter 7 a 7 and give the season as a whole an 8. Maybe that might more accurately reflect where you were at in the moment. All right, now Chris, let's go to you. See how
You got to
get it.
do this in Taco Bell sauce.
I
Dominic.
don't have
Start to be-
the conversion key in front of me, so you'll have to remind us. You'll have to do that yourself.
right,
You have to do
I
the
can do
conversion
that.
yourself.
I can
So
do
for chapter 1, you gave it a 7. Chapter 2, you gave it a 9. You guys gave the same scores for the first 2 episodes.
So that's like a mild and a hot.
Yeah. Chapter 3, you went back to a 7. Chapter 4, an 8. Chapter 5, 9. Chapter 6, 10. And chapter 7, an 8. And so for an average score of 8.29. And on the final episode, talking about chapter 7, you gave the season as a whole an 8 out of 10.
So, see?
So
There you
pretty
go.
close,
Yeah.
pretty close. You're pretty, you're pretty on the ball in terms of how you were feeling. You weren't feeling the dramatic mood swings of one Ben Hart, the Star Wars guy.
And that's because like my rating system is like extremely scientific, and it's like basically, is this as good as the movies? Is this worse than the movies, or is this better than the movies? That's literally my rating system. I just compare it to other Star Wars things and relatively put it up there. So like 9, and I've had that rating system since Cloak of Darkness, which was the episode I think 9 of season 1 of the Clone Wars. Like because
Way back.
because I remember watching that episode and seeing that fight between Ahsoka and Luminara and Asajj Ventress and being like, wow, this was like as well done and choreographed as the lightsaber fights in the Star Wars movies. And from then on, I decided that meant it was a 9. And then if it wasn't quite up to par for there, if there were things that were left to be desired, it was an 8. And then as it got worse and worse, it would go down from there. And then when I watched Lair of Grievous, I remember saying, there's some aspects of this episode that expands upon the Star Wars movies. The horror elements of that episode were actually more intense than the horror elements in the Star Wars films. So that's why I gave it a 10 out of 10, because it was the first episode that I felt to expand the tone of the Star Wars universe. So that's what a 10 out of 10 means for me, is this is better than the films. And then basically the 11 out of 10, which is the elusive Diablo that Book of Boba Fett never got, would mean that it was actually better than something else that was a 10 out of 10. So it's like, this is not only better than the films, but it's better than something else that's better than the films, essentially.
There it is. So, all right. So now for myself, I'll just remind you all of what I scored, how I scored the season. I gave chapter 1 a 6.5, chapter 2 a 9, chapter 3 a 7.5, chapter 4 a 6, chapter 5 an 8.5, chapter 6 a 9.5, even though really I should have given that one a 10. And chapter 7, I give it an 8.5 for an average of 7.93. Slipping just under the 8 out of 10. And my season score, 7.75. So,
Dang, I thought
right?
you were going to say 8.
No.
Dang.
Right in the,
You missed it.
right in the,
You had to add the 0.5 because almost all your scores have 0.5 on them.
Yeah, because the score out of 10 doesn't properly, even though I came up with this system, I didn't come up with it, but I'm the one who started implementing it on our shows all the way back on the Clone Wars Strikes Back. I don't feel it gives enough space for nuance. You know, it doesn't quite capture, you know, the full range of emotions that one can have when watching a Star Wars thing. But that, honestly, that sounds about right. Like, for me, Book of Boba Fett as a whole, like, to me, for something to be like, I consider an 8 to be just like solid, you know, can't ask for anything more, but also theoretically it could have been better and could have been perfect, you know, sort of in that sort of spot. And I feel like Book of Boba Fett comes in just under that. I think it did need a little bit more. I think it did need to focus up a little bit. Now, so Ben, out of the three of us, you had the highest scores average overall. But you did not have the highest score average amongst the people on the shows each week, because the person who would have the highest average score would be if we took all of our guests and combined them into one person, because
sounds like a horror movie.
because Jeff gave chapter 1 an 8, Aubrey gave chapter 2 a 10, Din gave chapter 3 after some finagling an 8.5, Eric gave chapter 4 an 8.5, Star Raptor gave chapter 5 an 8, Hannah gave chapter 6 a 10, and Jordan gave chapter 7 an 8. So the average guest score was 8.71. So our guests, as a general rule, it seems, liked the series better than us.
Because whenever we have an episode come out, we're like, let's bring someone on the show who hated this to talk about.
Yeah, well, there's only 1 week where our guests gave a lower score than the three of us, and that was chapter 5. Star Raptor gave it an 8, whereas I gave it 8.5, and you two gave it a 9. So there's Star Raptor coming in with the hard hitting.
He's such a negative guy. Yeah, he's always hating on everything.
Now, the other people we asked for scores out of 10 was the audience. We asked the audience during for their scores.
Wait,
and
did you was this spring break, Dominic, up again?
I had to work last Sunday, and I had nothing to do. It was the Super Bowl Sunday, and I was terrified that someone would walk up behind me and see me watching our show. And be like, yeah.
Oh my god.
Fortunately, nobody did. But funny. So our audience gave the average score from our audience across the season was an 8.24. So again, the audience liking it a lot. Just under the two of you and a little above where I found it.
So it sounds like between. Wait, are you gonna do it? Are you gonna do the massive sum of everything?
I mean, continue.
Because I was about to say, it sounds like we're like a little bit above an 8 when you average everybody's scores.
The precise number is 8.29.
Yeah. And then you'd have that one. That makes sense. Which again, what was mine?
Yours was 8.29. You were right in the middle. You got
in the middle. I was.
You were it.
So what does this mean? This means that I'm the most accurate reviewer of Star Wars. Second, haters. There are a lot of people in the chat. I saw y'all. I saw you, George, in the chat every week saying, "Stop complaining, Chris." I saw that. I called it.
Yeah. The highest rated episode across everybody was episode 2, chapter 2.
Wow.
The average score across everybody was 9.13. And believe it or not, the lowest scored episode, chapter 1, 7.38. It's sort of like the biggest fluctuation was in there. Yeah, I guess if you're wondering, the episode that people you might have assumed would be the highest rated, which would be chapter 6, is the second highest rated at 8.96. That might be where I'm looking at it. I think that's the week where there was the biggest discrepancy between the hosts and the audience, because I think we as a general rule liked that one better, by a whole point more than the average score in the audience. Because remember, that was the week that it was 3 10s out of 10 and 1 9.5 out of 10, just to screw with the system. So
yeah,
there it is. Yeah, 8.29. That's the average score from the Star Wars Underworld listeners and hosts alike. Anyways, that's what I wanted to bring. That's what I wanted to spring on you. That's Book of Boba Fett. That's how we scored it. If I have a similarly not busy day following Kenobi, we'll do it again. But
so
if not,
watch out, Rotten Tomatoes, because the taco meter is now going to replace you, and the Book of Boba Fett is certified hot.
it's more of a sauce-o-meter rather than a taco meter.
That is
like we're not ranking how many tacos out of 10 we give the episode. All right, let's get into
start doing that. I mean,
Maybe we should. Maybe we should. All right, let's get into the news. And we'll start with this week with a rumor about the Grammar Rodeo. Remember that? We're all on our way to the Sheraton Hotel in Canada to compete in the National Grammar Rodeo. This comes from Discussing Films. John Watts, director of the latest 3 Spider-Man movies, is in talks to direct the new Star Wars series for Disney Plus. This is what Discussing Film writes. They say, "We have learned that John Watts is in talks to direct at least one episode of an upcoming mysteriously unannounced Star Wars series for Disney Plus, with plans to begin filming sooner than you may think. The currently unannounced series is going under the working title of Grammar Rodeo, with production slated to begin this summer in Los Angeles. While we haven't been able to gather any concrete information on who will be writing this new project, we've heard from a handful of sources, and this is interesting, this is new too, that Jon Favreau will be executive producing. Favreau is, of course, an executive producer and writer on The Mandalorian and the Book of Boba Fett, and will soon additionally be credited as an executive producer on Ahsoka, which is at the moment in pre-production for filming slated to start in the next couple of months. Sources tell us that talks with John Watts on directing at least one episode on this classified series are dependent on his busy schedule, and they point out that ever since Spider-Man No Way Home came out, he has been a highly sought after director and has multiple projects, including the Fantastic Four movie from Marvel, Final Destination 6, I cannot believe there are 6 of those things, for New Line Cinema, and apparently he's got shows for HBO Max and Apple TV Plus as well. So
wow,
busy man. But John Watts, it seems like he's going to make some time for Star Wars. What do we think? What do we think of this bit of news? Ben, over to you first.
Oh, I mean, I've loved his Spider-Man movies, and I'm looking forward to his future projects. And if this is one of them, I would be even more excited. And if it somehow involves, this whole Grammar Rodeo, High Republic type show, I'm definitely game. And just more of this, more shows. But obviously, I'm looking forward to getting out of the Mandoverse, as we're calling it. Even though I love this era, I'm looking forward to seeing what things. But seeing that Favreau is still going to be involved, I do wonder how much Favreau will be involved, or just the fact that he kicked this whole thing off, kind of like he did with the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and still gets credits in all the Marvel movies. So you got to wonder how involved he will be, but he does deserve a lot of credit for doing all this and being involved so heavily, Mandalorian, Book of Boba Fett, stuff like that. So I would not doubt if he had some creative input into this.
I wonder if his level of involvement in this might be similar to Dave Filoni's involvement with Bad Batch. Or even Star Wars Resistance, where he sort of helped get the ball rolling, get things up off the ground, and then was there to provide advice and consultations and that sort of thing, but really left the writers and directors of those shows to do their thing. That's one possibility. Chris, what about you? What do you think of John Watts coming in for Star Wars here?
I kind of am taking more out of this than just the fact that it's John Watts doing Star Wars. I agree with Ben about, how exciting this is based on what he's done in the MCU. I mean, a lot of us consider No Way Home is one of the best MCU films. So that's absolutely incredible. But I think my take on this too is this opens the door for a lot of other really interesting people to direct Star Wars, because, while we've had some bigger names in there, obviously Favreau and Waititi are pretty big. There's been a lot of kind of people who are kind of, I would say, mid-tier directors that we've seen directing Book of Boba Fett and the Mandalorian. Rob Rodriguez, I would say pretty good, but not the top tier, not in the top 10 best directors of all time for me. I have a few friends who might disagree with that, though. And there's some super fans out there for sure. So I don't know. I think what this does is it opens the door for there pretty much to be anybody to come in. Now, I actually would be surprised if we get a Spielberg directed episode, of something.
Yeah.
So that's really exciting. So I think it's cool that they're willing to go after the top people, the people that are if the Oscars were a little bit more indicative of what the population was watching, as opposed to kind of what's kind of in the industry. Up for director of the year, or best director, or whatever that one is called. See, now they need like best pop movie director, or whatever they did. Remember?
They very nearly had the best popular film category.
Yeah.
That was a thing for a few minutes, I think.
Yeah. They'll bring in John Watts for that. They'll bring him back for that. Yeah. Well, it's interesting. Joel in the chat points out, John Watts knows how to direct young people in school. And that is kind of the thing that has me sort of most intrigued about him and this show, is that I think the best thing about his Spider-Man movies, like all three of them, has been Peter Parker and his friends. Like the web slinging stuff and the villains and everything have been good. Obviously, then the third movie, bringing back the other two Spiders, was a lot of fun. But really, in those across those three films, one of the most sort of consistent aspects that I think he got right was Peter, MJ, and Ned. And in the prior two movies, before No Way Home and Far From Home and Homecoming, there was an even more expanded cast of young people in those roles of the Peter Parker and his classmates, and I thought that was something that those movies did in a way that the other Spider-Man movies hadn't even bothered to try. They hadn't even bothered to do. So the idea that he could come in and maybe direct the first episode, and set the tone with this series that seems to be based around a younger cast. I think could be a really positive thing, a really good thing to get the series off on the right foot, and I kind of hope that's what's going on here.
Can we just have the whole cast of No Way Home and Star Wars? Like that's really what is being angled for right here. I mean, there's a chance that Zendaya is gonna get the Emmy for Best Actress this year. And supplant Olivia Colman and take the crown from her head. Okay, I'm going too far with this, but yeah, I mean, she's underutilized in No Way Home. Believe it or not.
Yeah,
and believe it or not,
and all three of those movies,
yeah, she's an amazing actress. So let's just have Zendaya and Tom Holland in Star Wars, please.
Yeah,
why not?
It's funny. Tony Revolori, I think is his name, and he got picked for the Wicked Thing. The Ewoks.
It's wicked awesome, bro.
The Warwick Davis Willow show. He's in that. So they've already kind of plucked one of those cast members out. I would love to see more of them, honestly. And I'm not saying Tom Holland's going to show up in Star Wars, but it would not, I'm not that I'm opposed to that. But I would love it if, like, I think, and jumping off what you said, Dominic, like the whole idea of that there is a parallel there in regards to him being able to convey kids from a kid perspective, and making Spider-Man feel like a kid, and all those characters kind of feeling like teenagers. Something we haven't really seen in Star Wars before. So outside of the Vespa gang, not young adults in Star Wars, not a lot of representation.
Well, and the thing to bear in mind is it's as much as we may love the cast of the Spider-Man movies, the roles that seemingly are up for grabs in Grammar Rodeo are for people who are considerably younger than they are now. So as fun as it might be to think, we'll just get Tom Holland and Zendaya and Jacob Batalon in there, get them all in there. It's like, no, they're actually looking for the people who are probably their age or younger back when they were filming Homecoming way back in the day.
No, Tom Holland will be the Jedi Master.
Yeah.
Jedi.
Well, that's where they can get Andrew Garfield. He can play the mentor character that they had, or what's his face, Tobey Maguire. Either of them, both of them could do that. One other quick thing about John Watts. When this story first broke, I looked him up to see if he'd done anything else that I'd seen. He hasn't, but I was reading his Wikipedia page, and it says he directed and co-wrote the films Clown and Cop Car, which I misread as Clown Cop Car, and am very mad that movie does not exist.
Oh,
because
wow.
that sounds like a terrific pitch if I ever heard one.
I mean, there's Puppet Cop Car.
Yeah.
I forget what it's actually called, but that was an interesting movie.
Yeah.
It actually has, you know what? It has Howard the Duck vibes, and I just know that now after watching Howard the Duck.
Look, John Watts, you're at the top of your game now. You're king of Hollywood. Got one of the biggest movies ever under your belt. You do anything you want, and you pick Final Destination. Come on, you got Clown Cop Car sitting on your desk. Come on, do it.
Go right from Star Wars, from Spider-Man to Star Wars to Clown Cop Car to Final Destination. That is a career trajectory
all I'm
that
saying
makes
is
sense.
There better be like a very brutal kill involving a clown cop car in the next Final Destination.
I was about to say that's a pretty Final Destination. I mean,
killer clowns in a cop car.
Yeah.
Would Clown Cop Car just be like a cop car that fits a lot of cops in it? Or would it be a cop car that's driven around by clowns? That's
both. It's
both.
a lot of clowns in a cop car, and you're just in there with all of them, and it's like claustrophobic.
All right. All right. Let's move on. Let's move off of Grammar Rodeo, although we'll continue to keep our eyes on that and talk a little bit about Obi-Wan Kenobi. Obi-Wan Kenobi. This is Ian McDiarmid, the Emperor. Somehow Palpatine returned, or maybe he could for Obi-Wan Kenobi. McDiarmid was interviewed by Weekend Extra, which is a newspaper out in somewhere in small town UKville. It's such a small town thing that like this news broke because someone took a picture of the article in the newspaper. It wasn't like a link that could be shared around.
Wait a minute, they still print newspapers?
What's a newspaper?
Believe it or not. Yeah. So Ian McDiarmid, he was asked about a possible return to Star Wars, and this is what he said. He said, "I think I have to accept that thanks to my ungrateful granddaughter, my annihilation was final." But of course, Darth Vader is back in the new Obi-Wan Kenobi television series, so I suppose it's not impossible that one day his mentor might be discovered once again skulking in the shadows. So, all right, it's time for a round of my favorite game. Something There or Make Her Relax. And Ben, for those of you who've forgotten, Something There, Make Her Relax. It's a game that we used to be playing on Toronto Sports Radio. And it's basically, do we think that Ian McDiarmid is hinting that he's in Kenobi? Or is he just speculating wildly that he could be brought back at another point for Star Wars? So is there something there or Make Her Relax? And Ben, because this game tortures you the most, we're gonna go right back to you. Something There or Make Her Relax. Is Ian McDiarmid in Kenobi?
Well, as much as I want to say Something There, I think this is like he's taking more this feels more like Sam Jackson route of like he's trying to create work for himself. He's trying to like things. It's not like, well, maybe I am, maybe I'm not. Like I feel like if he was in it, he would be like, I can't talk about that. He would be doing that whole thing.
If he were in it, he'd be doing more of the Frank Oz thing of saying, they asked me not to say
talk about that.
Yeah.
So I'm going to say Make Her Relax on this one. I don't, as much as like Kenobi shaping up to be a lot bigger in scope than I expected it to be, and something that I would not be shocked to see Palpatine. I'm not sure. I'm not sure Ian McDiarmid's coming back, but I'm glad he's eager to come back because he sounds very eager, and he's apparently pissed off at Daisy Ridley.
Chris, Something There or Make Her Relax?
I'm going to assume that whenever we hear a rumor or suggestion that a character is going to be in Kenobi, that it's true. This is what I'm going to do with this show. After the situation with the Book of Boba Fett, where there really, there were a few interesting cameos, but nowhere near as many as we thought. I think Kenobi is going to be the opposite. I think that's the reason why we didn't get as much in Book of Boba Fett. I think maybe even some of the rumors we heard about Book of Boba Fett. Might have even been for Kenobi, and it was mixed up.
Are you saying that Kira's going to be in Kenobi?
Yeah, everybody that you've ever heard a rumor about. Mace Windu,
Han Solo for Kenobi.
Han Solo is going to be in Kenobi.
Ben Solo is going to be little baby Ben Solo is going to be in Kenobi.
Yeah, it's called a flash forward. You know, in the Force, you see the future, faraway places.
It's true.
So, like, yeah, it's gonna have everything, and this one is one of the more obvious ones because it's like we know Hayden's gonna be in it, we know Vader's gonna be in it, so it really makes a lot of sense for the Emperor to be in it too if you have Vader. Yeah, this I would be a little shocked at this point if there isn't some type of at least shorter scene with Palpatine, if not having him be a little bit more of a recurring behind the scenes villain for things.
Yeah, I kind of think that it would make sense for Palpatine. Obviously, I think it would make sense for Palpatine to be in there. Like you said, Chris, it's in this time period. The show seems like they're going to be including a lot of stuff in it. And even if we don't see a ton of Palpatine, I suspect maybe a hologram conversation here or a hologram conversation there.
Yeah.
About what Vader is up to, or maybe what the Inquisitors are up to. Maybe it's not even Vader who talks to him.
Yeah.
That said, I also could see a scenario where Vader doesn't want to tell Palpatine about Kenobi. He maybe doesn't want to tell Palpatine about Kenobi until he's beaten him. Because Anakin's, last great failure, or Vader's first great failure, was, his defeat on the shores of Mustafar. And maybe there will be some scenes where an Imperial officer will say, "Lord Vader, the Emperor commands you to make contact with him," and Vader will be like, "No, not until I deal with Obi-Wan." Or the Imperial officer will say, "You should tell the Emperor what we're doing here." Vader will say, "Not until I kill Obi-Wan." This could. Because Vader and Palpatine, they don't have the most trusting relationship. Most of the time when we see them in the original trilogy, they're kind of they're always hiding something from each other. And I suspect that's an aspect of their relationship that's been going on longer than the original trilogy. So I won't be surprised either way. I think you could very easily put a Palpatine cameo in this movie, but I can also think of pretty easily some story reasons for why you wouldn't.
It's funny, there's some concept art out there. There's one piece that looks like it's in Vader's castle, and Vader is like in his office, and he's sitting in front of a hologram. And it could just be, any random person, an Imperial officer, whatever. But, I thought, well, what if it could be Palpatine? That's how I would expect to see Palpatine, not this like presence, but like he's just there, kind of Empire Strikes Back-esque of like Vader communes with him, maybe have a scene where he's like, he just flat out lies to Danny. Like, yeah, nothing's going on over here at Tatooine. I'm just checking out the place. I heard some stuff was going on or whatever. He's trying to keep Palpatine off the scent because, for whatever reason. Because I like the reading of like, I think it was Sam Witwer way back when, like had that reading of the Empire Strikes Back scene of like Vader going, "Oh, how is that possible? You found like." Vader knew, like Vader was on the case of like finding Luke Skywalker. He knew what was going on, but he still has to like, when Palpatine's like, "I found your son, and I found the thing," is like, "Oh my goodness!" So this is my shocked face,
I need that on a T-shirt. Just Vader saying, "This is my shocked face."
Oh my god.
Yeah, absolutely. And if we all turn our eye on canon for a second here, in the Vader comics that came out in 2015, he first hears the name Skywalker, and so he's been after Luke for a while. He knew Palpatine had been lying to him, and this is a scenario where I don't know if Palpatine. It's in this scenario where I think it'll be kind of the opposite though, because I don't think Palpatine has any reason to be lying to Vader about Obi-Wan, but Vader might have a reason to lie to Palpatine about Obi-Wan.
Yeah.
All right, so sticking with Obi-Wan Kenobi related stuff, let's talk about some lightsabers. These new lightsabers have been revealed by Good Morning America. They're toy lightsabers or plastic lightsabers that you can probably buy for, I'm not even sure how much these things would cost, 10, 20, 30 bucks at
It's about 30.
Yeah, Walmart or Toys R Us, Target, something like that.
Yeah, the cheaper kind.
Yeah, they're good for they're good for kids to play with. But there's an Obi-Wan Kenobi one that's been released, and there's a Darth Vader one that's been released, and they've got this box art that show kind of cartoonified versions of Obi-Wan and Vader, and that has some people talking that this appears to be based on the series, and therefore the first merchandise from the show. I mean, Obi-Wan Kenobi is kind of that Obi-Wan Kenobi the show kind of has the built-in the built-in advantage of you can just do Darth Vader merch and say, yeah, that's from Kenobi, and get all of us to buy another Darth Vader, and honestly another Obi-Wan, because if Obi-Wan's lightsaber hasn't changed in 45 years. Or I guess it was different in the Phantom Menace and Attack of the Clones. He had a different thing, but it hasn't changed that much. But this is another way to get people to buy a new Obi-Wan lightsaber. But there it is. I guess technically that's the first merch from the show.
And people have, this has been hotly debated. People were like, when I posted this on our social media, like, that's just Obi-Wan and Vader, blah 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 blah. And I point, and I was not the first person to point this out, that like if you look underneath, like Obi-Wan's collar is a bit different. It's kind of this. It's not that straight up like you have like the layering on, like if you look at like the collars that like the robes that Jedi wear, it's very like layered and very. This is kind of like this baggy thing that's kind of under his neck. It looks a lot like what he's. If you zoom in on some of those posters and look at some of those behind the scenes photos, it looks a lot like what Ewan McGregor's wearing for the show. So it's not like huge difference, but it's enough difference to like, okay, there's something here. There's something here. Not make a relax this time, okay?
Ben is confident that something's there with this one. Yeah, look, I think it's kind of a 6 one way, half a dozen the other way, because I guess that's a little bit like Obi-Wan. I guess that does look like Obi-Wan's new costume, but he's still got the cloak up. He still looks more like the Obi-Wan that we knew in the prequel era. We're not getting a good look at that new costume that you could very easily just at a quick glance think, oh, that's a picture from Revenge of the Sith. That's a cartoonification of Revenge of the Sith.
I will note there is the concept art of Vader and Obi-Wan fighting has Obi-Wan with his hood up.
Oh. Yeah.
I mean, that's the biggest tip off for me, because I feel like in a lot of marketing before Obi-Wan's hood was down.
There it is. So I don't know. Are those things available now? Are these lightsabers available now? Or are they coming
go to Walmart
soon?
and see later.
Yeah.
No, they like went over this. You can like watch this on Good Morning America's website or whatever, and it's just a video, and she just kind of goes through all these different toys and stuff from various different Disney properties, including some Marvel stuff. So like she kind of whizzes by the thing because the Buzz Lightyear kept like toppling over and it was very distracting her. She just kept on going.
Damn it, Buzz!
I felt very sorry for her, but yeah, there was like no mention of like this is just lightsabers and let's move on. It wasn't anything Obi-Wan Kenobi, whatever. Let's just we're selling the stuff and whatever. Buy it, please.
Lightsaber, ho hum, whatever. There, you've all seen them before. All right, let's talk a little bit about let's talk a little bit about the Star Wars Galactic Starcruiser, the new hotel event experience. Not really Renaissance fair. I'm not really sure what to call this thing that they're about to start selling. I gather from social media that a lot of influencers have been invited to try this thing out. And to all of them, I say I'm very jealous. I hope you all had fun, and I'm looking forward to seeing your coverage of it. So we're actually going to get a proper look inside the Galactic Starcruiser soon, eventually. But for the time being, all we've got is this new promo video for the experience. Now, you may remember that the Galactic Starcruiser has a bit of a checkered past with promo videos, especially those that involve cast members from the Goldbergs. This one is more of a classic Star Wars promotional video. The focus is on the Star Warsiness of the experience, and they've got Matt Martin from the story group in there talking about the Halcyon and everything that the in-universe side of Galactic Starcruiser. So let's take a look at the promo, and then we can maybe talk about it some more, and then we'll talk about one of the places in the story that we'll be seeing the Halcyon very, very soon.
You get to go live those. Do you join the Resistance? Do you join the First Order? Are you a scoundrel? There's a love story on board. There's everything you could possibly want. And we'll get to see some of the characters that we know and love from the films, including Rey and Kylo, who will actually meet up again for probably the first and maybe the only time between those two films.
The Halcyon has been involved in many different adventures, and there are many characters that we know and love from Star Wars that have had an interaction with the Halcyon. Where will our fans be able to hear all of these stories about the Halcyon?
Well, first we've got the Halcyon Legacy comic miniseries. So it's a 5-issue miniseries that sort of spans the generations of time that the Halcyon, kind of their whole history. After that, we've got the High Republic Mission to Disaster. The Halcyon has such a rich legacy, and I'm so excited to get to tell Halcyon stories for years to come.
And I'm excited that our passengers, when they step on board the Halcyon, are going to know those stories, and they're going to be able to participate in their own story and actually shape the events of the story that's happening as part of Star Wars Galactic Starcruiser.
God, I wish I had infinite money. I would want to go on that thing right away.
Hey, Disney, we're influencers.
Yeah. Just tell me what you want me to say. I'll say it. I'll be there. Say nothing but nice things.
What do we have to do to make this happen?
Yeah, I look, that promo video I think really does a much better job of selling the experience. Like, wow. I want to go, like, everything from just those like opening bits where you get to see like walking aboard the Halcyon and just walking through the hallways of all of it. Like, that part of it just seems like it'll be so much fun. The story elements of it, like, I know you're supposed to do like a special day at Galaxy's Edge when you're doing this experience, but I kind of, having been to Galaxy's Edge already, I'm sort of like, would they just let me stay on the ship and do all of the other things, assuming they have enough to do for 48 hours nonstop? And also, my question for anybody that's gone to the influencer event, any influencers out there, like, is there a shutdown point? Like, at a certain point in the night, do they just like stop with the they stop with the storyline, stop with the the in-universeness of it? Or like, conceivably, could I be sitting around in the lobby at 3:30 a.m. in a conversation with Kylo Ren, and that poor actor is gonna be like, Jesus, what, this guy, stop asking me questions. I don't know where Snoke is from. I don't know if he was in The Mandalorian. Stop.
I mean, it begs the question though, like, and I'm thinking about this, like, I didn't go to this thing and pay probably a lot of money to sleep. Right. So I'm going to want to stay up all night in this thing, not sleep a wink. I'll sleep when I'm dead or when I'm out of this thing, okay? I'm going to experience this thing, damn it. And I'm going to get the full experience. And, like, if they don't let people, like, are you locked in your room like all night? Like, okay, good night, lock. Stay in there.
All right, folks. Lights out at 11:30. We're only opening the doors if there's a fire.
So I'm just curious, and like, what is like the thing at night? Like, what's going to happen? Like, will there be certain areas? I'm assuming like it'll be something like certain areas, like the bridges, stuff, like, will be closed off probably. You will only access like a certain part of the inside of the ship at night. But still, like, I'm staying up for that, even if it's like, you know, a little room or whatever. Like, I'm gonna explore every nook and cranny of that place. Jeez.
Yeah. Yeah, well, the other thing was in the video, you hear Matt Martin saying, like, it's like, oh yeah, there's all these different experiences, so you can live out, like, you can be part of the Resistance, you can join the First Order, you can be a smuggler. I'm like, oh, am I gonna have to go multiple times? Do you have to go multiple times to get the full experience, or can you just, like, yeah, basically, can you be a smuggler on Saturday morning and afternoon? A member of the First Order Saturday evening and night, and then a rogue on Sunday during the day. Like, can we find some sort of balance in there?
That's the thing with this, is like, when you get there, it'll be like, okay, I'm here. I will literally only ever be able to do this once in my entire life. I have to make the most of this.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Like, it'll be fascinating to see, you know, once people can start going to this thing who aren't under some sort of NDA, like once it's open to the public and everybody can just sort of go, and you know people are going to go in there with their cameras and they're going to film a ton of stuff, and you're going to be able to watch probably most of this stuff play out on YouTube. It'll be fascinating to see like how much story they actually incorporate in there, because you know they talked a big game about Galaxy's Edge and how much story they were incorporating into that, and there is a lot of story at Galaxy's Edge to be found. But you do kind of have to look for it, because Galaxy's Edge is still just part of a larger theme park, right? It's still part of Disneyland or part of Disney World. So you can conceivably just walk through Galaxy's Edge and be completely not bothered by the fact that it's Star Wars. With this thing, you're there because you want the story. You're there because you want the experience. And, you know, the idea that, like, you know, Rey and Kylo Ren are going to meet at some point in there, that the First Order is going to be on board, and so is the Resistance. Like, you know, is it going to be like, you know, when you ride Rise of the Resistance, you know, there are cast members, there's Disney staffers that are playing characters who are First Order officers, and there are ones who are playing Resistance fighters, and, you know, they're just kind of there to shuffle you along from one thing to the next thing. Is it going to be kind of like that, or is there going to be more of a, you know, sort of interactivity element to it? Is there going to be more of a dinner theater aspect to it, where you're like sitting there, you know, you'll be sitting in the cantina, having your pre-dinner, you know, drinks, and then all of a sudden over there in the corner, the smuggler on board is being chased off by the First Order, and like you can watch the action if you want, or you can turn away and just continue, you know, drinking your drink. Like I'm wondering about that sort of thing, and I'm going to be really interested to hear first from the influencers and then from the public what this thing's going to be like, because that video does a great job of selling it. I'm really on board.
I feel like, you know, the first video, it was like the Disney Parks team and their marketing people, and then after that experience of that video coming out, they were like, oh, maybe we should have Lucasfilm's people do the promotion for this, because that last video with Matt Martin is very similar to the type of stuff you would see on StarWars.com about whatever.
Yeah, well, and you can really tell that, like, you know, Matt's a big Star Wars guy. Obviously he works on it, but, like, you know, he throws in there, you know, the way it was meant to be seen in there, which is the line from the special editions trailer. I'm like, all right, Matt, all right, I see you're dropping some Easter eggs for us. I like it. Now, he ran through at the end of that video some of the places that you'll see the Halcyon in publishing, in the world of Star Wars publishing. There's the Halcyon Legacy comic that's out. It plays an interesting role in the Mission to Disaster book from the High Republic era. But I think the place where we'll probably get our sort of most expansive experience on board the Halcyon is this new book that was announced this week, titled Star Wars: The Princess and the Smuggler. This was announced 2 weeks ago. It was announced on Valentine's Day because it's a new novel from Beth Revis, or Revis, I'm not sure, that will tell us the story of Han and Leia's wedding and honeymoon aboard the Halcyon. That's right. Han and Leia are the people that go to Disney World for their honeymoon. They're those people, and we love them for it. This is what StarWars.com says. This Valentine's Day, StarWars.com is thrilled to reveal Star Wars: The Princess and the Scoundrel, a new novel from author Beth Revis, arriving this summer. Set just after the events of Star Wars: Return of the Jedi, the story begins on the forest moon of Endor, where Han proposes in the elation of the Rebel victory against the Empire. After a ceremony at the site of the victory celebration at the end of the film, the newlyweds depart for a honeymoon aboard the Halcyon Starcruiser, the luxury vessel at the heart of the new Star Wars Galactic Starcruiser experience at Disney World Resort. In their most desperate hour, with the war still raging but the Empire nearing its last gasp, the couple must outwit the Imperial remnants clinging to power. So there you have it.
I just thought about the fact that they went on their honeymoon in the middle of a war that they just... I don't know how I feel about that.
Han and Leia are just like, we did our part.
Got the Empire on the run. Nah, we're going to celebrate now. We're going to the honeymoon.
Look,
we're going to take a cruise.
The experience is only 2 days. It's a 2-night event.
It's just 2 days. No big deal. Not like a whole lot can happen in 2 days. We'll be back. No time. You can hold down the fort.
Beth Revis, the author, also wrote the Rebel Rising book, which is a YA prequel to Rogue One, which sort of tells Jyn Erso's story between the prologue of that movie and the main story of that movie, which I will say I think is one of the underrated and underappreciated books from that era. I thought that one was really good, and I thought she did a great job with it. So I'm excited to see what she can do with the Princess and the Scoundrel, taking over the place of Han and Leia's wedding in Star Wars canon from the courtship of Princess Leia and other classic Star Wars expanded universe tales. But yeah, I'm looking forward to this. It was interesting. I looked at some of the reaction to the announcement of this novel, and there were some responses that were sort of I thought were kind of interesting. That there were some people who were saying they weren't looking forward to this book because they know that Han and Leia's relationship does not end well, because we've seen The Force Awakens now, and we know they split up at some point, and that sort of thing. And some people were sort of saying, like, what's the point in reading about them when they're, at their happiest together?
I mean, that's really the reason why I refuse to watch Attack of the Clones, because I know Padme and Anakin aren't going to end up together. So what's the point? I mean, House of Stars, I will never listen to that piece ever.
Yeah. Well,
I just can't watch Star Wars in general because I know it doesn't end well.
Yeah.
It ends with an old man shooting lightning and getting blown up almost every time. It just doesn't end well.
Yeah, well, it's sort of interesting. It's interesting to hear people sort of say that, and people put a lot. They project a lot of themselves onto these characters. So I understand where someone might be coming from with that point of view, but the reason to watch to read this story knowing that things are going to eventually end badly is because this story, I think, is going to show us Han and Leia at their best together. And if you love Han and Leia as a couple, as a relationship, isn't that what you want to see? Is them when they're at their best moments? And I think the Force Awakens and the way it portrayed their relationship, on the one hand, you can be very cynical and say, JJ split them up because he wanted to have Han as the loner smuggler. He wanted to have Leia as the rebellion general. And he just wanted to put them back into their roles from the original trilogy. And again, can understand where you're coming from in that. But the scenes they have together, I don't know. I feel like there's still a deep, deep love there between Han and Leia. And you can feel it on screen when they part, when they say goodbye to each other, that hug that they give each other, there's a lot of love there. And just because they weren't good together or they couldn't stay together after this tragedy in their life doesn't mean they don't love each other. And I don't know. I feel like that was actually like a really, intentional or not, it was a really sort of mature choice from JJ to, show a different kind of love in for these characters that, it doesn't have to be this perfect romance. They can still love each other and care deeply about each other, but have decided that they shouldn't be married, or that they can't stay married after this tragedy. So some of the response to this book got me thinking about that. And again, intentional or not, I think that's an element of The Force Awakens that is really kind of beautiful. And it's tragic, but it's still a really well done and really beautiful part of that movie.
Like, a flower doesn't last forever. It grows and it buds and it withers and it dies, and it's still beautiful and worth seeing and talking about. And so I think a lot of things are like that. They're not, very few things are forever. So it makes sense for our audio listeners, because they didn't get it last week. Bye-bye now.
Bye, Chris. Yeah. not just gonna jet out silently.
I was waiting for the dramatic
departure. Yeah. But yeah. So anyway, it's the Princess and the Scoundrel. I don't think we have a release date yet for this book, for this beautiful flower of a book that we'll all be reading.
I also saw a lot of different reactions.
I'm sorry, we do have a release date, August 16th, 2022.
Oh, okay, all right. It would have been, because they could have just waited till Valentine's Day. That would have been actually fun, but they announced it on Valentine's Day.
Just wait a whole year in between announcing it.
Yeah, but I did see a lot of mixed reactions, let's just say, on social media, for people being like, this is just big commercial for, Galaxy's Edge and Halcyon. And I'm like, yeah, it is. But at the same time, like, all the stuff has been, and I think I've enjoyed a lot of I haven't been the hugest fan of the Thrawn books, but like that one Thrawn book where they go to Batuu, I was like, okay, I'm kind of into this, because I can actually visualize this. I've been to Batuu. Yeah. I can go and say, okay, I can see when they're describing stuff. I can see that stuff.
I've sat in that booth where Vader and Thrawn got into a shootout. I've seen the results of it. I've seen the blaster fire scorched on the wall from that. Yeah. Look, I get why, you might take that sort of cynical response to it of, oh, it's just a big commercial for Galactic Starcruiser, but then you can just extend that out there and say every Star Wars book is a big commercial for the shows, which are just a big commercial for Disney Plus, and the movies are just a big commercial for toys. So you can draw that one out to its breaking point, just because we have to accept that Star Wars is this big, huge thing now, and all of it is, it ties into other stuff and ties into something that you can buy, whether that's an action figure or a holiday experience. I don't know. And you mentioned, Ben, the Galaxy's Edge tie-in materials. That stuff, a lot of that stuff was actually really good. Like, it was really enjoyable to read, even if you haven't been to Galaxy's Edge. Although they get the geography of Galaxy's Edge wrong in some of the books. Yeah. I will say there's one point where they say, oh, we're going to take a speeder from this place to that place. And I remember when I got there, I'm like, that's like, so you're going to take a speeder from here to across the street.
Yeah, Galaxy's Edge was clearly still under construction when that book was made.
Yeah.
But I think ultimately you have to, like, if it's bad, if the book is bad, it's just like badly written, and it's just like blatantly like they're just like, oh, look at this suite, and like they describe the suite in like detail, and all this kind of stuff, which probably will actually happen, but it's like more egregious. Like, I get it, but like ultimately, like you're saying, like Star Wars as a franchise has been criticized as a big toy commercial. It's just for toys. George Lucas and he wants more money, like all that stuff. That stuff is there. Yes, merchandising and all this kind of stuff was basically popularized by Star Wars. It's been part of the DNA of this franchise basically from the beginning.
Yeah.
You can make that criticism, but I think writing off a story saying, oh, this is crap because it's promoting this thing. No, they've made it a point from the beginning to like, this is all connected. This isn't just like a thing. I think it actually makes this stuff better and means that they're not just, all about advertising this stuff. It's about, okay, let's take great care in making this stuff feel like it's canon, feel like everything is on the same page, quite literally. And, having stuff reference each other and whatever. I think it speaks to the level of creativity, not the level of we want your money, which there is always going to be a part of that because it's a business. Okay, they're making stuff to make money. Okay, it's that's just part of it.
I mean, just the fact that we call it a franchise.
Yeah, exactly. So, if you don't like this, I get it. I totally understand where people are coming from. I'm not in that camp really. And if you don't want to read the book, that's fine. Go read Truce Bakura. But that book's still there.
Now there's a punishment for you. Go read Truce Bakura. All right, let's keep going. We got some more publishing news. Let's talk a little High Republic. We got some High Republic Phase 2 books that were announced. These are the first titles in the second phase. They were announced as part of the latest episode of the High Republic show. This is what we've got. We've got a new novel called Star Wars: The High Republic Convergence by Zoraida Cordova. That's going to be published by Del Rey. There's Star Wars: The High Republic Path of Deceit by Tessa Gratton and Justina Ireland. That's going to be a young adult novel. And then Star Wars: The High Republic Quest for the Hidden City by George Mann. That's going to be kind of a middle schooler book. There's Star Wars: The High Republic Quest of the Jedi comic book series that's going to be published by Dark Horse Comics. That's going to be written by Claudia Gray. And then also coming out is going to be The Art of Star Wars: The High Republic by Kristen Baver, the host of This Week in Star Wars. That's going to be published by Abrams Books. These join the previously announced projects that will make up Wave 1 of Phase 2 of the High Republic that include the unnamed Dark Horse graphic novel by Daniel Jose Older, the relaunched Marvel: The High Republic series by Cavan Scott, and the untitled Porter Engel comic by Charles Sewell that I assume will be published by Marvel, but you never can be quite sure with these things.
Can't tell these days. Everybody's, they're letting more people get in on the Star Wars. So
yeah, I'm looking forward to Phase 2 of High Republic. I think there's a lot of interest. I think it's a really interesting choice to go backwards in time. I don't love the way Phase 1 ended. I feel like it didn't go out with quite the bang that I was hoping it would. Granted, I've
not read anything recently or listened, so I don't have an opinion yet.
Yeah, I think it's been good, but there were points in the middle of Phase 1 where I would have said it was great. It's back down to good. It's back down to good as far as I'm concerned. And granted, I still have half of Midnight Horizon still to read and the final issues of all the comic book series. So there's still a little bit of room for them to push it back up to great. But as far as these new books are concerned, it's kind of hard to say anything about them right now because we don't know anything about them. Convergence, Path of Deceit, Quest for the Hidden City. Those are all interesting titles. Not sure what to make of any of them because we don't know any more details. So, but we'll continue to keep our eye on that, and I look forward to reading them beginning in October. I think is when Phase 2 begins. Also announced in the world of publishing, Star Wars Timelines, a new guidebook. Written by Kristen Baver, Jason Fry, Cole Horton, Amy Richow, and Clayton Sandell. Is going to be published by DK and is coming out this November. It says the all-new guidebook breaks down the in-universe history of Star Wars for a stunning visual guide that spans from the time before the High Republic to the fall of the First Order, encompassing the Skywalker saga films, live action series and animation, books, comics, games, and more.
I feel like this is a great book for non-Star Wars fans. Like non-hardcore fans. Like, well, which episode comes first? Read this. This is everything. Is how you watch it.
Well, that's sort of what I'm kind of wondering. Is it like, how is it going to be written like a nonfiction book where it's like, you read about these events in the High Republic in Star Wars Light of the Jedi by Charles Sewell, and then watch this episode of the Clone Wars before that one? Or is it going to be like an in-universe thing where it's like they just sort of summarize the events, but they don't tell you where they take place?
124 BBY or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. That'll be interesting.
That will be interesting to see how they approach it, because I think it could work either way.
Mm-hmm.
It would be like a great help if it was like out of universe, like just real world fiction, nonfiction. But also, for us hardcore nerds, I can decipher some BBYs and ABYs.
This is one of those books too that, like, I feel like they need to create like a subscription service for this book where, you buy it once for $30-$40, whatever. And then every year or every 2 years, you pay another $5 or $10 for the new pages that reflect all of the new content that's coming out.
Serious problem for me. I have over here Star Wars Year by Year.
Yeah, I was thinking of that.
It's one of the nicest Star Wars books, but it's from like 10 years ago, and it's totally outdated now. And then I see a new one. I'm like, I'm not buying the new one because in 5 years, that one's going to be outdated. So, what am I going to do?
You're buying a whole new book for an extra 30 pages sort of thing.
At least like with the individual, like, visual dictionaries, encyclopedias, stuff like that, like for the movies, like that's a complete picture, even though like they leave stuff out of it.
Yeah, it's a complete spoilers. It's a complete incomplete picture.
So like, there's no Palpatine. I don't think there's no Palpatine in Rise of Skywalker. So like, that's a bummer. But you get the picture.
Yeah. So if I were them, I would explore that, because that would make someone like me be interested in buying this book. Because if this book comes out now, I might flip through it while I'm in a bookstore. I'm probably not going to buy it, because it's for the same reason I haven't bought Year by Year, because I look at that book every time I see it and I think it's amazing and I think how I want it. And then I think exactly what you said. This is going to be out of date within months, let alone years.
Stop making Star Wars altogether. You just stop. That's the one you buy the Year by Year.
Yeah.
It's done. It's done.
No more. All right. Also in publishing news, we've got a new Obi-Wan Kenobi comic book that is launching in May of 2022. Hey, there's another Obi-Wan Kenobi thing launching in May of 2022.
Well, isn't that interesting?
Coincidence? I think not. This is it's going to be a 5-issue miniseries from Marvel. It's written by Christopher Cantwell with art by Ario Anindito. And basically it's going to tell stories from Obi-Wan's entire life, and it's going to be using the his Obi-Wan's journals as kind of a framing device. And if for those of you that have read the main Marvel Star Wars series, you've already seen some of his adventures out of his journals, and this is basically going to be expanding on that, which I think is a pretty cool framing device and a fun way to tie in with the TV show. I wish they were launching this now, I wish they were launching it now so that we could like start the Obi-Wan hype, like for the character just coming back, and then we could be reading new issues of it at the same time that the series is on, and then maybe it could last like 1 month after the series is over, sort of thing. But they always seem to have the comic book series begin at the same time as the series, and the comic book series is going to last way longer because it's going to be going on for 5 months, because it's 1 issue a month, whereas the series, which will be actually 6 episodes, will be done probably by the time issue 2 is out.
Yeah, I'm not sure Lucasfilm quite understands what they've got in their hands right now in regards to the amount of hype that this thing is going to generate. Book of Boba Fett was huge, because I social media is my thing. All right, I watch these things. I see comments. it was wild during Book of Boba Fett. Anytime you post anything even remotely related to Obi-Wan Kenobi, people lose their damn minds, okay?
Yeah.
And we're a couple months away from this thing, okay? It's going to get interesting when this thing comes out. And, we don't have a trailer yet. We don't have anything. We have the poster. That set people off. So, I think a comic series would definitely whet people's appetite going into this, but we're not going to be getting that for a while. But it's going to be interesting. May is going to be probably one of the biggest months in Star Wars history.
Yeah, it's going to be huge. We got Obi-Wan Kenobi, we got Star Wars Celebration, and who knows what else.
I keep forgetting about Celebration. We're going to have Kenobi on at Celebration.
Yeah.
It's going to be happening
the episode, the premiere debuts the day before Celebration opens. The day before.
I can't believe that.
There's got to be they got to be organizing some kind of screening for all the people that get there early. I got to think.
How could you not?
And you also got to think that the Obi-Wan Kenobi panel at Celebration, most panels are 1 hour. I got to think that one's going to be 2 hours. 1 hour is the classic panel with Ewan McGregor going, "Hey, it's great to be back," and all the new cast members going, "This is so exciting to be a part of it." And then hour number 2 is, "Hey, guess what? We've got episode 2 for you. Enjoy."
Come on, Lucasfilm. You know what to do.
Come on. Do it. Do it.
Please.
And we'll conclude our talk of Star Wars publishing with some sad news. Tom Veitch, the writer of the classic Star Wars comics like Dark Empire and Tales of the Jedi, passed away this week at the age of 80. Obviously, our thoughts are with Tom and his family and his friends. This is one of the guys. Everybody gives credit to Timothy Zahn for bringing back Star Wars publishing with the Thrawn trilogy, and not without good reason. Those novels were huge, but Dark Empire was coming out right at the same time, and the comics were just as big a deal. Bringing back Star Wars, getting it back into sort of the regular discussion amongst in fan circles. So Tom, he did Dark Empire, but then he did Tales of the Jedi, and where the books were really sort of content to just sort of play with Luke, Han, and Leia, and the characters of the original trilogy. He was one of the first guys to go, what would a different era of Star Wars look like? What would a different vision of Star Wars look like? And love or hate the Tales of the Jedi comic book series, they did a great job at showing us a different vision of Star Wars, a different time in Star Wars. And, they laid the groundwork for so much more to come, whether it's Knights of the Old Republic or the Old Republic that we're seeing now, or even the High Republic. And, all of that goes back to Tales of the Jedi and what Tom and Kevin J. Anderson and everybody in that era was doing. So really a giant in Star Wars, and he was somebody that will be missed.
Oh yeah, and kind of hard to fathom and kind of compute how much influence he's had, and probably you really can't quantify it because there's so much stuff that he introduced through all the comics and like that's now become mainstays. I believe he introduced Korriban, so many things from Star Wars lore that we know today is just normal stuff is comes from him. Let's face it, he came up with bringing Palpatine back to life first. That was his thing. And I think you would be hard pressed to deny that The Rise of Skywalker is not at least a little bit inspired by Dark Empire. So, I think his legacy, man, is huge.
Yeah, it absolutely is. All right, it's time. Hey, listener feedback time. We've been putting this off. We've been delaying it for long enough. It's finally time.
No more.
For some listener feedback. As always, if you want to send in listener feedback, if you want to send in your thoughts on what's going on in Star Wars, what we're talking about on the show, or what you think we should be talking about on the show, you can send it in swunderworld@gmail.com. That's the email address. Again, swunderworld@gmail.com. So we're going to start with an email from Jeff 2. Jeff 2. This email has been sitting in the show notes for so long that it was from a week where there was a Jeff 1 who had written in as well. So we got Jeff 2, and Jeff 2 has also sent in several follow-up emails that we've sort of combined into one long email here. So here's what Jeff says. Hi guys, Happy New Year. Again, we're almost at the end of February.
So sorry, Jeff.
Happy New Year, hopefully. Just watched episode 3 of the Book of Boba Fett and feeling a little disappointed. There was some cool stuff in there, and I'm hoping it connects up the dots with what's to come. But there seems to be a disconnect with episode 2, so my expectations have dipped slightly. If Crimson Dawn turns up with some expansive crossovers into the existing canon, that would be great, of course. What a shame. One thing that did cross my mind a few weeks ago, Robert Rodriguez cryptically mentioned colors and how they were being pulled out of the box a little bit. It occurred to me that the colors, that he must have been talking about the Vespas. So that's one mystery solved. Not meaning to sound too negative, as I'm enjoying all the little surprises and scenes. So I'm still pleased about getting new content. I also really loved the raw energy of episode 2. I love the image of young Boba watching his dad fly away. It wouldn't have been the last time Jango left, as Boba was with him on Geonosis, so it feels more like a looped memory of his dad leaving, something that occurred regularly with his dad's bounty hunting duties and now is being played out over and over in his head. What are your thoughts on Boba getting ruthless again? Have they put him in a character arc corner by making him fair-minded too soon? Would this be a regressive step to now have him now ruthlessly take control? So many questions. Cheers, Jeff. Hello, Star Wars Underworlders. Jeff 2 here again, or is it Jeff 3? I know you've given my earlier email time to breathe over the week like a fine spotchka, but it's worth writing again to say that my opinion of the episode has already matured. On second viewing, I really enjoyed the lore building, varied narrative connections, and Elder Boba rebuilding. One of the biggest challenges in breaking up a large story like this is managing expectations. And when you're kind of tired in the middle of a week, you may not be immediately receptive to a slow burner, especially after a week of waiting. Anyways, I once again wrote in to say that I appreciated your epic yet granular commentary. That should go on our poster for what we've how you describe this show. Epic yet granular. I've lost my place in the email. Oh yeah, epic yet granular commentary. And that certainly lends itself to analyzing serialized Star Wars because each episode is also epic yet granular. So thanks again for the generous thoughts and insight. P.S. Next week, I fully expect to see Boba riding a Rancor flanked by Black Chrysanthemum, Cyber Kids, and possibly some Tuskens as they face off against the Pikes, Crimson Dawn, Bosk, Cad Bane, Kira, and the Ghost of Maul. If this doesn't happen, Filoni and Favreau have ruined my childhood. Anyways, enough from me. Jeff 2 and 3. Jeff. I mean, he was partially right. We got Boba riding a Rancor flanked by Black Chrysanthemum, the Cyber Kid, and the Cyber Kids.
This close.
Yeah, going up against the Pikes and Cad Bane. Yeah, it's got about 50% of that of what he said. He goes on. P.S. Sorry, I know this thread may be getting a bit long now, so feel free to just take the best bits if there are any. No, Jeff, I'm reading it all. Final thoughts on the Book of Boba Fett. I love all parts, but not entirely sure about the sum. To pull it all together a little more cohesively, it would have been awesome if they'd been a bit more explicit about Boba's desire to build a new family, perhaps tempting Mando with this in the last episode after he was kicked out of the Mando house. And if they'd used their time to surround him with like-minded bounty hunters, kept the kick-ass Tusken woman that they built up so carefully as a symbol of new foundations and connections, and had Cad Bane be the big bad against the backdrop of the Pikes from early on to achieve the full impact in Episode 7. The Mando, Luke, and Ahsoka stuff was great, but I feel it meant they missed the potential for a solid Boba story while simultaneously burning some great dramatic opportunities for Mando Season 3 and reversing the powerful end of Mando Season 2. Colliding the two storylines meant that they didn't even have enough time for Luke to deliver Grogu personally with a message or farewell of any kind. Yeah, he does just kind of throw him in the X-Wing and say, get out of here. R2.
Put him in an Uber.
Yeah.
Send him off to Tatooine. I ain't got time for you, kid. I got a temple to build.
Makes me wonder if there were any creative disagreements with the direction of the show, or perhaps if Jon Favreau was simply being spread too thin on the writing process. Sounds like I hated the show. I definitely didn't, as my earlier email said. It did a lot of heavy lifting in the lore department, probably one of the key strengths of the series, and potentially something that will tie in and become more resonant as the other series unfold. It's funny how an appraisal of a Star Wars story is almost shifts by what comes next. And I mean that in a positive way. And I guess that's one thing that keeps us loving it. Thanks for continually turning out such a great show, and for listening to the inner ramblings of your listeners. Well, all of you listening to the show listen to our inner ramblings every week, so it only seems right that we return the favor. I agree with a lot of what Jeff says in that last sort of addition to the email. It felt like they needed to have Boba build up more of an army and have that army be more fleshed out than it was. And that was something I said as we were talking about the episode. I just kept seeing moments where I feel like there should have been more story, more setup, and more, just more character moments that could have been paid off. It sort of felt like we were seeing the payoffs for stuff that was never really set up, that was only kind of sort of implied. And so I do think that if you were serious about telling Boba's story, you should have skipped those 2 Mando episodes and used that time to do a really good Boba story, incorporating Din in there if you want, but mainly focusing on Boba.
I think there's a funny interaction when the mods are pinned down and Fennec shows up to relieve them because the Aqualish are shooting. I mean, Fennec, of course, shoots all the Aqualish and sets them on the run. And
that's coming up later.
Okay. I was just distracted there for a second.
Yeah.
So Fennec jumps down and they're like, "Oh, thank you," and she's like, "Oh, manners, I like it." I'm like, where did that come from? It feels like we're missing something. I don't think what was her, Scad or whatever their names are, Drash and Scad. I don't believe those characters and Fennec have interacted since they first met in episode 3, and then they're like, "Oh, manners, I like it." There's just something missing. It feels like we skipped a scene somewhere or something. And there was little things like that. It's it's not a big deal, but it's just there's stuff happening so quickly that, and there's so much happening that you're like, they're not doing enough to make this feel earned. And even with as much as I like the Cad Bane stuff, Cad Bane was he's there and then he's dead. And it's just whoa, okay, what just happened here? And it's a lot to take in, and also doesn't always feel earned especially when they're referencing stuff that we literally haven't seen on screen. We've seen it in Animax, we haven't actually seen it.
Yep. That was I think the biggest problem with those last couple of episodes, was that it was always referencing stuff that it sort of felt like the series was going, you've seen it, right? You know what we're talking about. We're all on the same page. And we're like, no, we're not. No, we're not.
I'm pretty big Star Wars fan. I've seen all the Clone Wars. I missed that episode.
Yeah.
Literally.
Everybody did. and even just, I'm a fan of this show. I missed all of the setup for why the different parts of Tatooine hate each other, or the manners thing that you were talking about. I don't know. It just, something was missing in there. But anyways, thank you, Jeff, for sending in your thoughts and for giving us kind of the 3 emails with kind of the running commentary throughout the season. It was fun to that was taking us through the whole season in one string of emails. Yeah. All right. Next up, we've got an email from Joel. Joel writes, "Hello, Star Wars Underworld. If you read the subject line for this email, it will most likely read why the next major Star Wars creative should hate Star Wars." Now, that's just an over-exaggerated subject line to get eyeballs on the email. I don't actually think this, and I have a more nuanced approach to this madness. So with that being said, let me explain.
Joel is doing clickbait in emails. Come on now.
Yeah, exactly. A lot of people, when thinking about whatever the next entry in the Star Wars saga, episodes 10 to 12, say that they should be directed by Dave Filoni or Jon Favreau. Personally, I don't want them involved. The reason being, they love Star Wars. Or let me rephrase. I think they love Star Wars a little too much. One of my biggest problems with almost all Star Wars creatives, like Favreau, Filoni, J.J. Howard, Ron Howard, is that they love Star Wars a bit too much and hold it dear to their hearts. And because of this, I don't think they want to stray too far from the path of what they consider Star Wars. Even if we got younger directors who have more love for the prequels than the originals, I think we would still have the same problem, just replacing one generation for another. Instead of love of X-Wings, it's Naboo starfighters. And I think this email was written before we saw that episode of The Mandalorian. Oh my God. However, my favorite Star Wars movie, The Last Jedi by Rian Johnson, a person who I know loves Star Wars, did something that I think Star Wars needs to do in order to move forward truly into the future. Essentially, it didn't hold anything of any part of Star Wars sacred, including its philosophy, and was willing to move beyond even what even Lucas himself had taught. We are what they grow, or they are what we grow. Sorry, we are. I'll get this quote right. We are, it's written wrong in the email. I blame Joel. We are what they grow beyond, after all, and Star Wars should grow beyond itself, and yes, even grow beyond George Lucas. It's why, when again people say Dave should do episodes 10 to 12 because he was George Lucas's Padawan, that's a mark against him for me, because I think he's too close to Lucas and Star Wars, and I think Star Wars needs a bit of distance from them both. I look for the first of someone else's version. I look forward to the first of someone else's visions, not the next George Lucas, quote unquote. Someone who is willing to question everything about Star Wars and come to new conclusions, especially if that person perhaps was someone of a different background. Now, that doesn't mean they have to disagree with everything Lucas set up, of course, nor probably should they come to any conclusions like dictatorships are good and Palpatine was right. But I digress. My point is that in order for Star Wars to evolve, it needs creatives who aren't going to hold the past of Star Wars sacred and are willing to challenge, bulldoze, and rebuild, maybe even into something better. Which is why the next person who helms the next trilogy shouldn't love Star Wars so much that they aren't willing to be critical of it, question it, and maybe even improve it. What do you guys think? Do you agree, disagree, or think I'm nuts? Love the podcast as always, Joel. I agree in general with Joel that I think Star Wars has gotten a little too focused, that some of these directors don't want to get away from what Star Wars has been in the past. And J.J. Abrams, Ron Howard, Jon Favreau, I feel like they sometimes get a little bit stuck in the, let's just do this cool thing that we've seen before, but we'll do it again with new technology. And, in the behind the scenes, in the making of The Force Awakens, there's a moment that I thought was really telling. And in hindsight was kind of a bit of a warning about the rise of Skywalker. Was J.J. Abrams said that he wrote the scene at Maz Kanata's castle because he wanted to do a cantina scene, and he felt that if people went and saw a Star Wars movie that didn't have a cantina scene, they would be mad. And that if he had gone and seen a Star Wars movie that didn't have a cantina scene, he would be mad. And so he created that scene as a result. And I sort of think that's kind of the wrong thinking. You do Maz's castle. Yeah, you do Maz's castle, or you do a cantina scene because it makes sense in the story, not because that's just what Star Wars is. I'll get to where I disagree with Joel in a second, but I will say that I think we are going to get a little bit of a taste of what Star Wars could be when it's made by someone who doesn't have the same reverence for it that we all do later this year when Andor comes out. Because Tony Gilroy, who's the showrunner for that, is everything that Joel is describing in this email. And I pulled up this clip from Tony's appearance on the Moment podcast. And I've isolated a couple of little segments of him talking about what he thinks of Star Wars. And this is after, bearing in mind, this is after he stepped in and wrote the reshoots for Rogue One, and let's be honest, directed the reshoots for Rogue One. So this is a little clip from the Moment podcast. It sounds like you're going to hear at the beginning, it sounds like they're kind of arguing. They're not really arguing. It's just we come in at kind of an odd moment in the conversation where they're being loud. But this is Tony Gilroy being interviewed on The Moment.
Did I
Were
sweat
you
it?
scared about it? Because it's
No,
Star Wars.
because
I'm
you know
asking the
what?
emotional question,
No,
not the narrative.
no, I was actually, in fact, that was my superpower. I don't like I just never been interested in Star Wars ever. So I had no reverence for it whatsoever. I was unafraid about that. Things require a purity. If you look at Rogue,
Yeah.
all the difficulty with Rogue and all the confusion of it and all the people and all the smart people and all the mess. And in the end, when you get in there, it's actually very, very simple to solve because you sort of go, oh, this is a movie where, folks, just look, everyone's going to die. So it's a movie about sacrifice. So it's all a question about why are all these people going to sacrifice? And you need to motivate them with a purity throughout the way. And every scene has to be, every scene in the movie has to be about the movie. And so is that a theme that everyone's going to die and sacrifice? Well, in that sense, in that film, I thought about it.
So you loved the experience. Would you make a Star Wars movie? I'm sure they asked you and you didn't want to go do it.
No, there's nothing. I don't like it. I don't like it.
You don't like the world if it doesn't matter.
No, it doesn't matter.
Beyond doing
it doesn't
that
appeal
thing.
to me. No, but I don't think Rogue really is a Star Wars movie in many ways. To me, it's a Battle of Britain movie.
Obviously, that interview came out before he signed on to do Andor.
Right.
But in it,
So
you
much
look
for not caring about Star Wars.
or not wanting to do it either. But yeah, look, he says in that interview, one of the first things you hear in that clip is him saying, I don't like Star Wars. This is not somebody who's going to, go around and be interviewed and talk about, getting a Millennium Falcon for Christmas or desperately wanting to get a Millennium Falcon for Christmas and only getting a Chewbacca plushie or something, this is somebody who he's looking at Rogue One as a story about Jyn Erso, about Cassian Andor, about Baze Malbus and Chirrut Imwe and Bodhi Rook. He's not looking at it as a story about Star Wars. And where Abrams and Ron Howard and Jon Favreau and Gareth Edwards probably got a little too caught up in, we're doing a Star Wars. We're making something that's about Star Wars. And as a result, I think Rogue One, which was the movie that I was most worried about new fans struggling with, or the casual audience, quote unquote, struggling with, I think it wound up speaking to more casual fans than some of the other stuff. Some of the things that are more Star Warsy. You'll hear all the time people who say, "Oh, I'm not really a Star Wars fan, but I really like Rogue One," because what they did with that movie is they made you care about those characters outside of, the cultural significance of the Death Star. You're scared of the Death Star in that movie because those characters are scared of it, not because you remember the Death Star from 40 years earlier. So I think Tony Gilroy brings the right approach. And, to be fair to J.J. Abrams, Ron Howard, and Jon Favreau, all three of them, I think, know that and have said things like that. And at times in their movies, I think they do a really good job of delivering on that, of doing something that is just good because it's good, not because they're doing a Star Wars. So I want to be fair to those guys because I don't think that I think they all made good stuff, but it's interesting to me that Rogue One resonates in that way when you have the guy who stepped in to save it is the guy who's saying, the world of Star Wars never interested me.
It's kind of hilarious if you look at Star Wars fandom right now. If you look at people's conversations and you take from it, okay, to be a Star Wars director, to be a writer director in Star Wars, you have to love Star Wars. You have to be just in love with it since you were a baby. Like that used to be your thing. And you have people like the top people that people want to direct Star Wars movies are people like Dave Filoni, who obviously massive Star Wars fan. Jon Favreau, obviously massive Star Wars fan, knows all the details, all this kind of stuff. What is it when people are anybody's even involved in the smallest role in Star Wars? What's the first thing they're going to ask them in an interview? Well, how long have you loved Star Wars since you were a kid? All this kind of stuff. Did you get the Millennium Falcon when you were 3? Like all this kind of stuff. You have the guy that helped make, that is basically the co-director of a Star Wars film that is, I think we can all agree, is like one of the best Star Wars films, if not, and I think a lot of people would say is their favorite Star Wars film. If you ask people right now, if I put a poll on Twitter and say, what is your favorite Star Wars film? Rogue One would be like near the top, if not the top. That guy saying he doesn't like Star Wars. How crazy is that? And it just goes back to the fact that this really doesn't matter. Your personal fandom does not matter. And I agree with a lot with Joel. I think we need different perspectives. We need people. I love a lot of what Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni have put into this.
Oh yeah.
I love a lot of J.J. Abrams, but I like if I'm picking between like J.J. Abrams or Jon Favreau, I lean towards Jon Favreau just for the fact of like Jon Favreau kind of knows everything, and he has Dave Filoni in his ear the entire time, telling him, "Oh yeah, put an Naboo and one Starfighter in that show. Like give Mando that thing." So like all that stuff, all the references, all the reverence for the entire saga, I appreciate that, but it is becoming a thing where it's always referencing itself, and that can get old. And you need to be able to broaden the scope of Star Wars. Star Wars needs to be able to expand and evolve, and I think with Rogue One it did in a lot of ways. It's the most gritty, it's the most grounded Star Wars movie because it's made by someone who doesn't care.
Yeah.
Doesn't care about Star Wars. They're just making a movie, and it's great.
And I expect Andor will kind of continue that forward, that Andor will be the show that sort of goes, yeah, we're going to do our own thing. We're not going to worry too much about tying in with Star Wars.
I don't think it's going to contradict anything, but I don't think you're going to see a bunch of prequel references or even maybe references to the original trilogy in that thing.
And if we do, there'll be things that, people other than Tony Gilroy will have fought for. It'll be the other writers on the show, the other designers on the show who will be telling him, no, we should put this in there because it would be cool and the fans will like it. And he might sometimes go, yeah, okay, that doesn't impact my story. Okay, well, let's do it. And other times he'll go, what? But that doesn't work as well as this other thing that's new. So let's do the new thing. Din makes a good point in our live chat. Rogue is so good because of the tension between the love of Gareth and the not precious attitude of Gilroy. And I think there's a lot of truth in that Gareth
and who knows like what kind of movie had we gotten if it just been Tony Gilroy or just been Gareth Edwards doing it. I think maybe the perfect storm of that movie is the fact that we got both of their points of view on it.
Yeah. I think the movie that it would closest resemble if it had just come out, just been the Gareth Edwards version, I think it would have looked a lot more like Solo. For better or for worse, for better or for worse, because that's a movie, like there's the tension that we're talking about between Gareth Edwards and Tony Gilroy, not so much between them as people, just in their styles. Gareth wants to do Star Wars because he loves Star Wars. Dude went to Tunisia for his 30th birthday, like that's hardcore. Whereas Tony Gilroy's like, yeah, I don't care. I don't care about any of this stuff.
Tunisia, he's never going to go.
Yeah, if he's gone to Tunisia, it's for a completely different reason. I don't know what it is.
He doesn't even know where they filmed A New Hope. All right, he doesn't care. He doesn't even know it.
He's probably like, somewhere in California. Who cares? But
why would I go out to the middle of the desert to see an igloo? Come on, man.
But then on Solo, you had the tension between the Kasdans and Lord and Miller, and that tension crossed over between good creative tension and into something that became personal, I think, where they couldn't see past their tension.
I don't see how it could not be personal at that point.
Yeah. So as a result, I think the movie that we got was something that was much more of we're doing a Star Wars that the Kasdans wanted to do, and you know, a lot of people love the references in Solo, myself included. I mean, but you know, Tony Gilroy is not writing in a Terrace Cassie reference into Andor. He's probably not going to make Maul the surprise villain at the end of a series. He probably, Tony Gilroy would probably do what I think they should have done with Solo. And maybe this is just me projecting onto him. I don't know Tony as a person, but I think the ending of Solo shouldn't have been Kira calling Maul. It should have been Kira taking over as head of Crimson Dawn. To me, that's a more satisfying. If we remove the Star Wars of it, that's a more satisfying twist, a more satisfying turn for that character. And, you know, all the speculation now about Kira is we want her in that role. That's what people were hoping would show up in Book of Boba Fett. It was her in that role.
Well, and you look at these different creators, I think there's so many different points of view, not just through like Star Wars fandom, but like their relationship with Star Wars. You look at someone like Lawrence Kasdan, Ron Howard. They not only grew up with, they were involved with it, they were very close to it. Even Ron Howard, I mean, friends with George Lucas, like he was pretty close to the source of Star Wars, even despite not really being involved with it. And you have Lawrence Kasdan, who was there almost from the beginning, writing the stupid thing. So, like, you know, you have that, and you have people like Lord Miller coming in and be like, yeah, they're fans, but they're also distanced from this. They're just coming into it now, and they have a completely different perspective, and those clashed. But I think in a perfect scenario, everyone gets to have their shot. I want to see what Lord Miller would have shown us. I want to see Gareth Edwards' version. I want to see what Tony Gilroy's version. And I think what Joel's getting at here, just going back to the original email, is like, you know, we're getting a lot of this great stuff from Jon Favreau, but you know, I think it could be getting old, at least to some people. I'm not really feeling that, but I can see where people are coming from, and I do want to see more diverse voices. And we're not just talking about, you know, in response to like having more women or people of color writing, directing, whatever. Still a lot of that also, but also just different people in general writing, directing Star Wars. That's the key here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And you know, in fairness to John, I think, you know, we've said before that the thing that makes Mandalorian great, the reason why that show has resonated, is the relationship between Grogu and Din, the character. And that has, that, you know, that has something to do with, you know, it's related to Star Wars, but at the end of the day, that's just a pure character relationship, and that would work if you took the Star Wars out of it and you just had a cute little alien baby and a futuristic knight on adventures together. That's a story that still works. And so, you know, in fairness to John, you know, he, you know, sometimes goes a little overboard for my taste in terms of the references, but at the core of his story is a really, you know, a really universal, really powerful tale that works outside of the galaxy far, far away. And honestly, same with JJ, you know, the first half hour of Force Awakens with Rey and Finn, just perfection. Like,
it is. It really is. Like that. I think that might be, if you just like chop Force Awakens in half. I love all of it. Chop that in half and just take that as a movie. It's the best Star Wars movie.
Yeah. It's pretty great. It's pretty great. Here's where I disagree with Joel. I want Dave Filoni to do episodes 10, 11, and 12.
I'm not going to disagree with that.
At you know, fast forward a few years. All the seasons of Mando have come out. All the seasons of Ahsoka have come out, if there are more. All the seasons of Rangers or whatever other new shows have come out. Dave is a well-versed live-action director. I want to see what he would do with 10, 11, 12. I want to see where he picks up that story. I want to see what he does next with that story. And, you know, he was George Lucas's Padawan. He learned at the feet of George Lucas. You know, that's what people say about him, and you know, it's true. But George Lucas was the person who gave the least of a flying fadoo about what people thought Star Wars was. You know, ask anybody in 1991 to imagine the plot of Star Wars Episode 1. Nobody is giving you the Phantom Menace other than George Lucas. Nobody is doing that. And so George's vision of Star Wars could be very anti-Star Wars, for lack of a better term. And I think Dave is not afraid to dive into that and do that too. There are lots of arcs on Clone Wars that are, just kind of weird and aren't as super popular as, say, the Siege of Mandalore is. Even we'll go in season 7, which is a season that was produced largely without George Lucas's involvement. Even season 7, the Trace and Rafa arc, like that's an arc that gets a fair bit of hate.
Yeah,
undeservedly so, in my opinion. I really think I think those are great stories. Those are really, really great stories. And I think what you see in there is George being willing to, it is Dave acting like George and being willing to be challenging and to, he has our main character who is a Jedi or, was a Jedi being forced to confront all of the flaws of the Jedi. And, where people want to write stories about Jedi that are really heroic and really wonderful, there's Dave going, not so much, not so much. So I think Dave Filoni should, if he wants to, should be given a crack at 10, 11, 12, writing them at least, if not directing them. And and I suspect he'll pick up on some of those things that we've heard about what George was planning for his version of 7, 8, 9. I'm not saying Maul's going to be the villain. I think Dave put a pretty fine point on ending Maul, but who knows? Maybe it could get into some weird Force stuff. Some of the things that maybe we'll see in Ahsoka. So I agree with Joel's overall premise that maybe we need to look outside of the Star Wars fan directors to find our future storytellers, but I disagree on the specifics that Dave Filoni shouldn't be one of those people that we turn to for the future.
Yeah, I think overall Filoni has a good sensibility about like this kind of stuff, and I think maybe a lot of the references and stuff like that you see in Mandalorian, it's probably a lot Favreau. Like, I think Favreau was like, let's put McClunky, let's have Din say McClunky, and Filoni's like, let's not do that. So I think Filoni is a lot like George. I think he has a lot of George's sensibilities, and George is someone who weirdly loves Star Wars, but also was like, didn't have reverence for it. I think that's the whole thing. I think that's the finding the George in everyone, I think is the right thing to go with.
Yeah. All right. Thank you very much, Joel, for sending in another very thoughtful and thought-provoking email. All right, next up, we've got one from Tony. Tony writes, "Hey, Underworld, I like listening to your show every week and cannot believe that I've been doing so for almost 10 years at this point. I can't believe we've been doing the show for 10 years, Tony, so that makes 2 of us. I thought now would be as good a time as any to start writing emails in for your listener feedback segment. I wanted to write in regarding my thoughts so far on the book of Boba Fett. I really loved The Mandalorian and was super excited when Boba Fett returned. I've always liked the character and wanted to see Tamora Morrison return in the role. I'm really glad he got his own show, and I've been really enjoying it for the most part. I'm Dakota, and the way the Tuskens were done in the movies has bothered me since I was a kid. In Chapter 5 of The Mandalorian, I was pleasantly surprised to see them make an appearance and done in a more respectful way. And I've been enjoying seeing them since Chapter 2 of the Book of Boba. And I've been enjoying seeing them since then, and Chapter 2 of the Book of Boba Fett was amazing. I love what they did with the Tuskens in that episode. I was disappointed to see the tribe killed in Chapter 3. It was disheartening to see a respectfully handled group of native-coded people be killed off, as you so often see in TVs and movies, especially when they had avoided falling into those sorts of tropes up until that point. At least I felt that the funeral scene was well done and the music was very good. I hope that the way they go forward in the story will be done better, but it's still rough after that. I'm glad that Tem is involved in the storytelling, but they need more Indigenous people as part of it. There are plenty of Native writers, directors, and actors out there who would be a great fit for Star Wars, and I hope that they are given a chance to tell their stories in the Star Wars universe. I've really enjoyed the rest of the show, and all 4 episodes that have been released so far are really good, in my opinion. I'm very excited to see where the rest of the series goes. I have a question that I thought might be pretty interesting. We know that pretty much anyone is on the table now, and it's possible that we could be seeing characters like Dr. Aphra, Aurra Sing, Malakili, or even Wilro Hood in the future of Star Wars TV. Personally, I would love to see Moma Nadon appear. He is the Ithorian in the background of the Cantina in A New Hope. In both Legends and canon, he is a rebel sympathizer who was exiled from Ithor after being forced to reveal botanical secrets to the Empire to save his people. He helps rebels on Tatooine and even has his own garden outside of Mos Eisley. Something about the character has always appealed to me as a sort of, and any sort of appearance would make me quite happy. Can you think of a more obscure character who you would like to see in live action? May the Force be with you, Tom. Or Tony, excuse me, Tony. I've misread the name at the end of the email there. First off, I had no idea about the Ithorian in A New Hope, that he was exiled because he revealed botanical secrets to the Empire.
That's amazing.
That's incredible. Yeah, I don't know. It's a more I can't think of a more obscure one. I'll tell you what though. With Kenobi, I'm really, really looking forward to seeing more of Uncle Owen and Aunt Beru.
Yeah, absolutely.
I can't believe that that's a sentence that I just said, because like after watching A New Hope, who would think, yeah, those are the 2 characters I want more of? But I think there could be something really interesting there. I mean, these are the 2 people that, Obi-Wan and Yoda trusted to protect Anakin's son, to raise Anakin's son, to raise him to be a good person. But at the same time, they wind up having a really sort of tumultuous relationship with Luke. And part of that, I think, now that we've seen the backstory and we know the history of Obi-Wan, of Uncle Owen and Aunt Beru and Anakin's story, part of that might be from a desire to protect Luke. In Star Wars as it was originally written, I think Owen telling Luke you can't go to the Academy is less to do with him wanting to protect Luke and more with him wanting Luke just to take over the family business, as George Lucas's father wanted George to take over the family business and didn't want him going off and being an anthropologist or a filmmaker or anything like that. But now that it seems that they know what happened to Anakin and they know the truth about Luke's father, Owen not wanting Luke to go to the Academy takes on a different sort of meaning. But so I'm really excited to see more of those 2 and see what they think of all of this. And I expect we'll see a little bit of that in the series. I suspect we'll get at least one scene with Owen and Beru having a little chat with old Ben, the crazy wizard, and maybe wanting to keep explaining why they want to keep Luke away from him.
Yeah, when they said like officially that, oh yeah, we've got the cast of Obi-Wan Kenobi and Joel Edgerton and Bonnie Peace are back as those characters, I was unreasonably excited. Just like the fact, because that was one of my really big wishes for the show that I really didn't think they would do. I thought, they're going to overlook this, and those characters are actually really important, not just to Luke's story, but to Obi-Wan's story. And the fact that we got pretty much nothing from them, we have this whole Owen's not even gonna look at Obi-Wan when he brings Luke because he's so mad at him. I'm like, what is going on here? I need to know this story. And just the idea, I'm not saying we're gonna get that story. It could also be glossed over here again because there's probably a lot going on, but just bringing those characters back and having them be a presence again and giving, obviously both those actors a chance to kind of do and say more, especially Bonnie Peace, who had like one word in the prequel trilogy. So, I love that. So, getting into those I don't know, getting into those characters' heads more, I think would be really interesting. And
Absolutely.
yeah, they're maybe not obscure, but they're maybe obscure for like a casual fan's perspective. But still characters that could be, overlooked and are not apparently.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree. Totally agree. So thank you for that question, Tony, and thank you for sharing your thoughts on the Book of Boba Fett and the way they handled the Tuskens. Because that was something I kept hearing after Chapter 3 came out. There was a bit of whiplash from one of the best bits of native representation in Star Wars to falling into the old trap. So.
Yeah, I'm not gonna get into it now, but after watching that finale, I'm like, you had to set up with the people of Freetown. They needed an army. Really would have been nice just to have an army of Tuskens to call upon. I'm just saying. Saying.
Yeah, and I completely agree that there's lots of terrific indigenous talent out there, writers, directors, actors, who should absolutely be brought on board for Star Wars. It's great that they've got Tem in there. It's great that they're going to have Taika come in as well. But those two guys can't do it all themselves, and you need more than just two guys trying to do everything. So again, thank you, Tony, for sharing, and thank you for the question. Next up, we've got one from Nate. Nate says, "Hi, it's Nate. It's been a while since I've written in, so I thought it was about time to send in another question plus a story. I'd like to start off with my story. This story starts when I wrote in to you guys last time, so let me preface this story by saying I work at a local comic book store, which will help this make sense. Here we go. One Friday, I was moving comics around like I'm prone to do from time to time. I was listening to your podcast, and you guys were reading my email. So I finished the podcast and came back down from the storage facility upstairs and entered the main comic store. Out of the corner of my eye, I see somebody in a plaid checkerboard style shirt. I walk to the back of the room to grab something, and all of a sudden my brain catches up to my eyes, and I immediately think, wait, was that George Lucas? I walk back into the room, and to my astonishment, my boss is standing there talking to a person that looks exactly like George. At this point, my brain is dead, and I'm all instinct. So I slowly start walking towards. As I get closer, I realize they're talking politics. So I decided to listen for a second about what George has to say about the world. And all this time, I'm getting closer and closer. But then it hits me. This guy isn't wearing Ben Franklin style bottle cap glasses. And then I realized that George would have been older than this guy at this point. So long story short, this guy turns out not to be George, but the spitting image of a 1990s George Lucas. Thanks to me listening to your podcast at work, I thought one of my boss's friends / customers was George Lucas. Nate, I have to tell you, that's the best Star Wars story we've gotten in years. That was the rising tension, the drama, the twist at the end.
He had me there for a second. I'm like, wait a minute. Because there has been public George Lucas sightings. Like, it happens.
In comic book stores.
Yeah, that's his haven, man.
Yeah. Back to the email. Nate says, now on to the question. I was listening to your Celebration Chicago podcast and was wondering what your guys' favorite celebration / convention stories of all time, or what are your favorite celebration / convention stories of all time. Thanks for reading this, Nate. P.S. Have you guys ever thought about starting a Star Wars Underworld Discord server? To answer the last question, we haven't. At least we haven't actually discussed it. But I know other podcasts that I listen to have Discord servers, and I know they're very active and very, very fun. And I could, maybe it could be something to consider down in the future. It would require me to actually learn Discord.
Yeah,
I've tried a couple of times. I've tried a couple of times, but I just haven't found the right community for me. So maybe a Star Wars Underworld Discord could be that community. So anyway, we'll see. That's something to consider. Something to consider. Now, on to the question. The main question: favorite celebration or convention stories of all time. No pressure, Ben, but tell us the best, greatest, most wonderful Star Wars celebration story you've ever experienced.
like, does it, like, it depends on your definition of great, doesn't it? Like, does it have to be like a story that I've experienced, I guess?
Yeah, like from your life.
Yeah. I just go back to I go back to my what do you want to call it? My wardrobe malfunction at Chicago. I ripped my pants going. Long story short, ripped my pants going through security. Then I couldn't get any new pants, so I did a podcast with a giant hole in the back of my pants, and I made sure to not to face the crowd the entire time. Yeah, it was fun. It was a draft back there the whole day. It was a cold day too. It was a lot of fun.
It's hilarious if you look at any pictures from that convention. Like Chris and I will be like turning around from that live podcast. Chris and I will be like turning around, and Ben's like, statue forward. Don't move too much.
Yeah, it was just like, I think my shirt is kind of covering it, but it's really not. So, and then, every time you make a move, it's one of those rips that just keeps getting worse and longer. And it was, that was an interesting day.
Yeah. Oh man, I've been to so many celebrations at this point that like I struggle to like they've all just become like one big
same
blob of awesome that I'm trying to pull out a specific memory, and like I'm trying to avoid the usual ones of like the Force Awakens trailer at Celebration Anaheim, or John Williams at Celebration Orlando, or the Thrawn reveal at Celebration Europe, things like that. Like I'm trying to pull out a different one, but man, like it's hard to fully describe Celebration if you haven't been. Like, you think of Comic-Con, maybe you've been to your local Comic-Con or something, and those are great experiences. Like, Ben, I know you were at a Comic-Con this weekend.
Yes, I was.
And I, you have a lot of fun at those things, but there's something different about Celebration. There's a different energy there. And it's just the best time. Everybody is having such a good time. And I'll tell this one from Celebration Chicago. And it's not a new one. We've told it before, but it was when we went to the Phantom Menace 20th anniversary panel. And before the panel, like the whole time leading up to the panel was almost better than the panel itself, which was a good panel. But there was in the lead up to it, because it was the first panel in the morning, and they had like the pre-show entertainment there with the DJ and the MC going around, and the DJ at like 10 o'clock in the morning was like basically putting on a 90s themed party for everybody, and was just playing all of this 90s music, and everybody's just having the best time, singing along, rocking out, having a good time. And of course the last song they play before the panel is The Saga Begins by Weird Al Yankovic, and everybody's singing along, and they're waving their lightsabers, and they got the flashlight on their phones, and everybody's just going along, and it's great. It's really just such a fun atmosphere. And then to begin the panel, they play that iconic Phantom Menace trailer. Every saga has a beginning, that one. And bearing in mind, this was in the same room with a lot of this was in the same room that they debuted the Rise of Skywalker panel, or Rise of Skywalker trailer, just like a couple of days before. Same room where they had shown the first bits of The Mandalorian just a couple of days before. Same room where they showed the new trailer for the Clone Wars final season, for the debut trailer for Jedi Fallen Order. All of these things had happened in this room and had been seen by a lot of the people in this audience. If not in the room, then they saw it on their phones or after the convention or on one of the satellite stages. So we had all just seen all of these new, incredibly new, amazing things be revealed to us in this venue over the course of that weekend. But they showed this trailer that everybody in that room had seen before. But everybody there, every audience member just went, you know what? I'm going to pretend like I've never seen this thing before. And people reacted to it like we were back in like 99 or 98 seeing this thing for the first time. And so every little moment got a huge ovation. When the Star Wars theme kicks in with the pod racers, gets a huge ovation. The first look at Amidala gets an ovation. The Maul with the double-bladed lightsabers, everybody's going insane just for this like Just for this trailer for a movie that is literally 20 years old. We're there to celebrate the fact that this movie is 20 years old and we're pretending like it's the newest thing there. It was just this like moment of collective, just like agreement to ignore reality and embrace the fantasy for, 2.5 minutes or however long that trailer is. So that's one of those things that like can only happen at Celebration. I love that one. And that's, everybody in the crowd just going, yeah, screw it. We're just going to play along for a little bit. We're just going to play along.
That was so much fun. Yeah. I had forgotten about that one, but yeah, that was, I agree. The panel was good, good, but like that pre-show was so good.
Yeah.
And I remembered one truly amazing. I'll give you another bonus one really quick before we move on. I think this is probably a truly amazing moment, probably one of the most amazing ones in Celebration history. Obviously, 40th anniversary panel, and John Williams comes out unexpectedly.
Yeah,
and of course the room, which is full of about 1,000 people, goes ballistic. Everyone is screaming and all that kind of stuff, and of course John Williams wants to play something for us, and all the man had to do was raise one finger to his lips, just like that, and the room went silent instantly. That's all he had to do, just that. He got shushed by John Williams, and we knew to shut up immediately. Everyone in the room like, okay, he's gonna do something. Okay, John Williams told me to shut up. Okay, I'm shutting up. Okay,
yeah, he is literally Santa Claus in that moment, just like. Shh. Everyone be quiet. You're about to get your Christmas presents. Everybody calm down.
And I love like occasionally you will hear in the crowd like shh, 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 shh. like John Williams just said to shush, to shush.
Great moments. Great moments. I can't wait to have more of them. And as much as we're talking about like the big panels and stuff. And we could sit here and tell you stories about those big panels for days. Like we got so many of them. But there's also just the little moments in between. And there's the moments on the show floor. There's the moments in line. There's the moments with new friends and old friends. And just it's incredible. And so, as great as those moments are, we're hoping to have the Star Wars Underworld booth again. There are so many just like great little moments that happen there that like, you maybe don't think about when you're describing Celebration, but they're pretty special too. Just the people that are around. And I'll tell a story that's important to me. Is a Celebration 2015. We were there in Anaheim. And it was the first time that Ben, you, me, and Chris had gotten to hang out in person together. And, it was a busy weekend and we'd been running around with all sorts of friends and we've been having a wonderful time. But we decided we were going to go and see Revenge of the Sith in 3D. And so we had to line up for this thing. And we were in line for that screening for somewhere in the range of like 2 hours. And it was the first time the three of us had actually gotten just to hang out, not by ourselves because there were thousands of other people in line, but where, it was... we were all together. Where there was nobody else around that we knew, and we were just sort of like, basically do the podcast for nobody but ourselves for a few minutes there, and it was really special. And I'll also remember that we all discovered that we had the exact same unlock code for our phones at that moment in time, which means that you can all probably guess what it was. And I will tell you, I have since changed mine.
Yeah, because Apple requires more numbers now, so it's a bit different.
Yeah, we can't all have 1138 anymore.
Dang it.
All right. Thank you very much for that email, Nate. It was fun. It was a great roller coaster with your story, and it was fun to go to dip into our stories. All right, let's keep going. We're powering through. We're continuing on with this. The next one is from Michael. Michael writes, "I'm listening to the February 5th episode as I type. So if you guys get to this later, then ignore this. We would never ignore you, Michael. But I wanted to share the cameo that we did not get, but I could have sworn we were about to get. We got Cad Bane, Ahsoka, Luke, Mando, Grogu, Cobb Vanth, and honestly, at this point, Boba's basically a cameo in his own show. Zing! However, when Grogu was flashing back to the temple, I had myself convinced that a blue lightsaber was going to fire up in the midst of those clones and cut those 3 Jedi down. What if the last thing we saw in the flashback had been the cowled face of Hayden Christensen's Anakin bearing down on our little green buddy? Needless to say, or never say never at this point with the cameos and crossovers. It's a fun time. Oh, that would have been something
That would have
else.
been crazy, and also like could have happened because like Hayden Christensen's on set now doing Star Wars stuff as Anakin probably. So
yeah, it could still happen.
It
Could
really
still?
could.
Like, we got a little snippet of that in Book of Boba, of that flashback. What if we see more of it in Mando season 3 or
I feel like
in Ahsoka?
They've set it up. They've teed this up. They have Ahsoka going, someone took him from the temple, and after that his memory goes dark or something like that. And then you have this flashback. I think, well, I said that about the Boba Fett flashbacks, and those went nowhere. But it feels like they're setting up for something. It feels like they're teasing us out to maybe give us something further, in regards to like what actually happened to Grogu. And it might tie in directly with, the whole thing about why the Empire wants him, why they want his blood, all this kind of stuff.
Yeah. Could be pretty interesting. Could be very interesting. I think we're gonna find out. We're gonna find out who took Grogu from the temple. It's only a matter of time. But thank you, Michael, for that excellent visual that perhaps we may yet see on screen. Next up, we got one from Jesse. Jesse writes, "Good evening, gentlemen of the SWU. Another fun random question for the group. If you had to pick a species from the Star Wars universe, what would it be and why? And would you live on the home planet of your species, or would you find a home in another system? For me, I would probably choose a Twi'lek living on Felucia. And as for why, honestly, I felt rushed by my own question, and I love the Twi'lek design, and that planet is beautiful anyways. May the Force be with you." All right, what species would you want to be, and where do you want to live, Ben?
I feel like what's better than being human? There's probably a lot of species that are better than human.
That is humanist. That is speciesist. That will not fly in this galaxy, Ben.
Look, I dare anybody to disagree with me. Humans kind of suck. Okay, we just do. So I'm thinking like more arms, maybe or like a Nautilin where you can breathe underwater and stuff like that. Maybe. I think like a basilisk or whatever you call it. Like
Dex.
Dex or Ponkrell. Like for you, you're big. And I think I don't know, what is their planet like. I don't know. I think I just live on Coruscant because that's my favorite planet.
Fair. I would want to be a Womp Rat on Cloud City.
I was going to say, don't say Tatooine. Don't say that.
No.
Not on a planet where they brag about being able to bullseye you.
No, I don't know. Maybe it might be fun to be a Wookiee. That might be cool. Or
again, you had enhanced strength. A bit worse temper, but
a Wookiee on Naboo.
I like it.
Yeah. Or honestly, Or honestly, sticking with Naboo, it probably wouldn't be terrible to be a Gungan. Like, we all think about Jar Jar, but like Tarpals is pretty badass. Boss Nass seems like he lives a good life. And like, there's all these, like in Star Wars books now, there's all these Gungans that have left Naboo and are like, super educated and posh and stuff. And it's like, and it's sort of like, like you don't have to be Jar Jar. You can be something, you can be a different kind of Gungan, or you can be like Jar Jar, because Jar Jar is cool too. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know if that answers your question.
Really high.
Yeah. Thank you, Lego Star Wars. I don't know if that answers your question, Jesse, but, those are some potential theories. Next up, and I think this is the last one. We made it from Hugh. Hugh writes, Boshuda Underworld. I thought I'd drop by and mention my thoughts on the Book of Boba Fett now that the show is wrapped up. See, we've caught up.
Whoa!
The emails are actually about the end of the show now. I agree with Dominic. That's how all emails should start. In regards to how Chapter 5 and Chapter 6 played out, they're good Star Wars stories as a whole, but placing them in the middle of Book of Boba Fett put more pressure on Chapter 7 to wrap everything up. It consequently resulted in a structure I found jarring, particularly as I was already invested in Boba Fett during Chapters 1 to 4, which were a brilliant set of episodes. I'm thinking of giving it a full watch again to have a more refined opinion, as I'm currently quite mixed on the show. On a side note, I'm happy that I guessed correctly in my last email that the Sarlacc's beak and tentacles retracted. That creature sure knew how to do a jump scare. I also have a question regarding the format of the podcast. Will you be continuing the side shows such as Podforce 99 when new Bad Batch and other content comes out? Or are you going to condense Star Wars reviews within the main podcast, like with Book of Boba? Additionally, who would win in a three-person hat wearers duel? Cad Bane, Dave Filoni, or Sir Benjamin, the Star Wars gentleman? Lastly, I recommend a parody video called The Bob by the channel Hour of Poop, which made videos such as I Am the Senate, but Palpatine is Wallace, and the silly sods of Sodor. My note of caution is that these videos can be PG and upwards, but The Bob also has recognition for being uploaded just 24 hours after Chapter 1 was released. All right. Keep up the great work and enjoy a good Polynesian spa. Best wishes, Hugh. I've not checked out this parody yet, but I will give it a look. Well, Ben, why don't you take the second question? Who would win in a three-person hat wearers duel? Cad Bane, Dave Filoni, or Sir Benjamin, the Star Wars gentleman?
I feel like it would have to be Sir Benjamin. He would just annoy the hell out of Cad Bane and Filoni. They'd be like, "No, make it stop!" Their ears would be bleeding, and they would just fall over and die, because it would be too much for them.
See, I think Cad Bane would win because he would get so annoyed with Sir Benjamin that he would take him out. But he'd also look at Dave and be like, "Game recognizes game. You're my creator. I'm going to let you live, but just know I could have killed you." And then he'll walk away. He'll make a long walk through the desert to where he parked his ship because it's more dramatic that way. So Jesse in the chat says, no offense to Ben, but Dave wins the hat battle.
Look,
of the three, Dave Filoni is the original hat wearer of the three.
Does Dave Filoni have control over Cad Bane? Like, could he just tell him what to do because he created him?
There's a good point. So Dave might win on that regard because he could just tell us what Cad Bane did. Actually, that just reminded me of a really fun convention story, and one that also includes one of my few regrets in all of these years of covering Star Wars. It was New York Comic Con 2015. And we were lucky enough to get to interview the Rebels cast and crew that were at New York Comic Con. So it was Ashley Eckstein, Taylor Gray, and Dave Filoni. Oh. So we did the interviews with Ashley and Taylor. It was awesome. They were both super cool, super nice, as you would expect. And then Dave comes over. And as you guys know, if you've watched the show, or if you've seen pictures of me at conventions or just in life, I like to wear a Toronto Blue Jays baseball cap everywhere I go. And for a while, I had this really cool Toronto Blue Jays baseball cap that I still have. I just don't wear it as much. That on the brim had a stormtrooper. And when Dave came over to me, he saw it and he was like, "Oh my God, this is so cool." And then he took it from me and he walked over to one of the PR people from Lucasfilm and goes, "Have you seen this? Why don't we have Pittsburgh Pirates versions of this?" So the man who is known for wearing a hat liked my hat. And my regret in this is that I didn't then say to him, "Well, I'll trade you." and let him wear my hat, and I would get to wear his hat for a minute.
Oh my god!
I coulda, shoulda, woulda done it. I just missed out.
I'm sorry, but as someone who has met Dave Filoni and been across from him a couple times, your brain just freezes up.
It's true.
Like, I remember just saying the dumbest thing to Filoni when I met him. Like, I ran into him on the phone. Mr. Filoni, I really love Rebels and Clone Wars, and just acting like a complete imbecile.
Yeah.
So like, so I definitely feel you there. I'm like, what? I feel so embarrassed that I didn't think of that.
I've met Dave on several occasions. I've run into him on several occasions. He doesn't know me. We're not buddies. Like, it's not that scenario. Every
There's a
time
reason I call him Dave. Yeah, we're on first name basis. He calls me Dom. Yeah.
Yeah. Every time he meets me, I'm a new person to him. Like, I'm a new person that he's meeting for the first time.
He has a million best friends.
Yeah, and same thing. Like, the first bunch of times that I met him, like, it was like, Dave, what, hi, what, like, like I met the first time I met him was at Celebration Europe in 2013, and it was a similar sort of exchange that we had there. Sort of like you, I was like, I love the Clone Wars and Rebel. It was before Rebels had come on, but I was like, I love Clone Wars. You're amazing. It's so nice to meet you. And he's like, hey, thanks. And then again, he saw the Blue Jays cap. He's like, oh, you're from Toronto. Are you a Toronto Maple Leafs fan? Because he's a big hockey fan. And I said, yeah, I am. And he goes, what are you going to do about your goalie for next year? I'm like, I don't know. I don't know. Normally I have opinions about these things, right? Like, if you ask me now about the Leafs goaltending situation, I'll tell you all about how I think Jack Campbell is struggling a little bit, needs to step up his game, but I still have faith in him to be the guy to carry us through the season. And I think they overpaid for Peter Mrazek in the offseason. And while he's been a solid backup, I wouldn't trust him in big games. So I have opinions about these things. But at the time he asked me about it, I'm like, I don't know. And he was like, you know who you guys should get? Jonathan Bernier. I'm like, yeah, sure. Why not? Fast forward 2 years later at Celebration in 2015, I go up to him again, say hello again, same thing. See, as the Blue Jays cap. Oh, from Toronto. Are you a Leafs fan? What do you think of their goaltending situation? Because not much had changed in those 2 years. And I'm like, I don't know, Dave. I was a little bit better. And then again, he goes, you know who you guys should get? Jonathan Bernier. Like, we literally had the exact same conversation. And then, like, 2 months later, the Leafs signed Jonathan Bernier. So Dave Filoni knew what he was talking about, but Bernier also flamed out and wasn't very good. So Dave also didn't know what he was talking about. And then subsequent times, like I saw him at Celebration Chicago, which was happening during a Leafs playoff series. So I was wearing my Leafs jersey around. I saw him and he points at me and he goes, "You watching the games?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm watching the games." He's like, "What's going on with that series, man? Why are you losing to Boston again?" I'm like, "I don't know, Dave. I don't know." So every time we have a very similar conversation, except for that one time that was an interview.
Yeah, I love how like you describe like having similar conversations with him like every time you meet him. If it was any other person, you'd be like, "Oh, this person's crazy. Like, they have short-term memory loss." But then you're like, "Oh, it's Dave Filoni."
Yeah.
He has had interactions like that, like thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of times. He can't keep them straight.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I'm not like I will continue to be very happy to meet Dave and be a new person to him every time. If he wants to become friends, I think we would be great friends, but I also am content with just being a new person every time. And then, so back to Hugh's email, the question about the format of the podcast. Right now, the plan is to keep just doing one show a week and to incorporate, Bad Batch reviews and Mando reviews and Andor reviews and all that stuff into the weekly show. That's the plan as it stands now. But who knows? Things can always change, right?
Yeah.
I loved doing the secondary shows, like doing the spin-off shows for the reviews, in part just because it was fun to make a new intro for all of them. And I really like the intros that we have for all of those shows, whether it's Radio Razor Crest or Pod Force 99 or Kazuda Cast, all of those ones. Clone Wars Strikes Back too. All of them. Like I love those, and I loved sort of separating them out. But as Star Wars has changed in the last little while, and I feel like more and more, because when we started doing those, we started doing them really for Rebels with Live from Lothal, and at that time, Rebels was definitely secondary to what was going on with the movies, and so it would be weird to come onto the show and dedicate a whole bunch of time to talking about Rebels, when really what people were interested in hearing was Force Awakens rumors and spoilers and news and that sort of thing. So we sort of separated that out so that the people that wanted to hear Rebels stuff could hear it, and the people that wanted to hear Force Awakens chatter could hear it. And then it just was a convenient thing to keep doing because the shows tended to be released on Fridays, on Saturdays, on Sundays, like days that didn't, where we would be waiting a long time to review the episodes.
Yeah.
So it just made sense to keep them separate like that. And still at the time, I think people were more interested with what was going on with the sequel trilogy as a whole than they were with Rebels or Resistance. Not to say that Rebels and Resistance don't have their fans or that people shouldn't check out those shows, because they're great. But that was just the way things were back then. Now that the shows are weekly, it feels like there's less to talk about between. There's less when there's an episode airing every week of the Book of Boba Fett. That's the main focus, by and large. There'll be a few other things. There'll be a few other things, but by and large, the new episode of the Book of Boba Fett, or the new episode of the Bad Batch, or the new episode of Kenobi, those are going to be the focus of the week, and so that's what we're going to talk about on the show, because that's what people are talking about, and that's what people want to hear talked about, and that's what we want to talk about, frankly. It's more, I'd much rather have a conversation about Book of Boba Fett than the latest sideshow Gentle Giant collectible reveals.
And realistically, I genuinely, like, behind the scenes thing really quick here, I don't know what we would have talked about if it hadn't been for Book of Boba Fett, like those weeks, because there really wasn't much news going on. It was almost 90% Book of Boba Fett. We would have had to stretch it out, which we have in the past, and we would have, but it was a lot. We
would have gotten to a lot more listener feedback a lot sooner.
Oh yeah, for sure. We would have had a whole episode devoted to that. And like you're saying, like I love the process of like coming up with the name for the new podcast and making, like, one of the most fun things I ever did was make the intro for Kazuda Cast. Like that was so much fun. And doing that show was fun, probably sometimes more fun than the show itself. Like, I genuinely, like, some of these episodes, every series we've had has had dud episodes, but it's still fun to get on and talk about them. And we're still doing that. It's just easier on this show, because as much as I love that process, it works a lot better with my schedule when we could just do it on this show.
Oh yeah, and that's the other sort of unspoken part of all of this, is that it's just more convenient. It's just more convenient to do all the shows, to talk about everything, on Thursday, to not have to worry about finding a convenient time over the weekend to record with not just ourselves but our guests. Like, at least with this, it's always set at this time that we record at. So there's a lot I miss about the side shows, the secondary shows, the spin-off shows, whatever you want to call them, like Pod Force 99 and Radio Razor Crest. And maybe we can do a better job of incorporating that into the main show, to the weekly show, as we go forward. But for right now, the plan is to just fold in the conversation, the review, the discussion about the new episode on the weekly episode of this podcast, rather than do a second show about it. And I will say, not to nitpick He-Was words, but he says condense. I like fold in, because I don't think we condense those Book of Boba Fett conversations. I think if you were to go through those last few episodes and chop out those Book of Boba Fett discussions and release them as their own podcast, they'd be about the same length as your average Radio Razor Crest episode.
Yeah.
So not to nitpick here, but I just wanted to point that out.
No. And weirdly, it's kind of going back to the roots of this show, doing it, because go back to don't do that. I'm just telling you. I'm telling you so you don't have to.
Yeah, don't do this.
If you went back to, episodes of the Star Wars Underworld podcast circa 2011, 2012, there wasn't much going on in Star Wars. We were talking about the latest episode of the Clone Wars. That's basically what this show was created for, was to talk about the Clone Wars. So, it kind of bringing it back as much as I would love to. And at any point, if we get an opportunity to bring back the spinoff shows, I 100% want to do it. But for right now, this is more comfortable where we are.
Yeah. I liked being a 2 shows a week show. Like at times, like I liked having a show on Monday and a show on come out on Monday and a show come out on Friday. But it was also a lot of work. It added, when we would get to the end of a season, like when we got to the end of the Bad Batch season, there was a Thursday that I couldn't do the weekly show because I had to go to my other job, my real job, I should say. And I was telling somebody that I was skipping the show, and they're like, "Oh, you're skipping the show? That sucks." I'm like, "I don't care this week. I've done 2 shows a week. I've done minimum 2 shows a week for the last 16 weeks. I'm taking a week off. I don't care." Like you said, Ben, if there's an opportunity to bring them back, or maybe to release a show on Monday, if something happens over a weekend, or maybe we just want to do some one-off specialty episodes. Maybe and it's really busy news-wise, or there's new episodes of Book of Boba. Well, I guess not Book of Boba, or Andor or Kenobi or something that's airing. Maybe we'll drop a show on Monday and just surprise everybody.
I would love to do. Obviously, I'd love to do more stuff like this. But generally speaking, the past 10 years have taught us that trying to get the 3 of us on one call together outside of a Thursday night at 9 p.m. Eastern is really, really difficult. And sometimes even that isn't the case because one of us isn't even here right now.
Oh yeah. There's a few Radio Razor Crests that I did by myself. Yeah. There were a few Kazuda casts as well that it was me and a guest. But I will say, actually, we're talking about, maybe releasing some stuff on Mondays, again, it just occurred to me that I might have something in March. There might mid to late March. Keep your eyes peeled. Maybe we'll drop something on a Monday. Certainly in the podcast feeds. I won't say certainly, but probably in the podcast feeds and maybe on the YouTube side of things as well. But that something's coming together in and around mid to late March that I would love to share with you all. So we'll see about that. We'll keep our eyes on that. But for now, that's where we're going to leave things for listener feedback. Thank you to everybody who sent in emails. Again, if you want to send in your thoughts on something we talked about tonight or something that you think we should be talking about on the show, swunderworld@gmail.com. Maybe you got a great story you want to tell us. Maybe you have an opinion on Book of Boba, on the High Republic, on Kenobi, on anything else that's coming up. Again, swunderworld@gmail.com is the email address. And with that, we will begin to wrap things up for this week. Thank you, everybody, so much for listening. We will be back in 7 days' time for more great Star Wars discussion here on the Star Wars Underworld podcast. In the meantime, as always, don't forget, if you want to support the show financially, you can do so by going to patreon.com/theswu. There's some merch there, and you can also get access to our weekly pre-shows for as little as $1 a month. If you enjoy the show, make sure you subscribe and review on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts, wherever you're listening to this. Subscribe and review. Those help us out, and that way you'll never miss an episode. And if you're watching on YouTube or you want to start watching on YouTube, make sure you punch that subscribe button. Hit the thumbs up. There's a YouTuber I like. There's a hockey YouTuber I really like. He ends all his videos. He says, if you click the like button if you like the video, click subscribe if you really like the video, and tell all your friends. So that's what you need to do. That's what you need to do. Ben, thank you for being on and holding down the fort when it was just the 2 of us here.
No problem, and glad to do it. And yes, tons of great stuff to talk about tonight, and tons of great feedback. We finally got to it, guys. It's great. And we need to make a better, do better at getting to more of it more often, because some of you guys had to wait a really long time. But yeah, it was great to finally hear from you guys. And yeah, we'll be back next week. I don't know what's gonna happen. We don't know when the next show is coming out. We don't know what the next Gooses News is coming out. We don't know when that Kenobi trailer is dropping. But we'll be here in 7 days' time to talk about whatever Lucasfilm wants, or sometimes it's not Lucasfilm, sometimes other people to throw at us. So yeah, looking forward to it.
Yeah, and the one thing that's left in these monstrosity of a show notes that we have. Spoiler alert! Spoiler alert! I think we'll get to those next week. It won't be the whole show. So if you don't like spoilers, you'll be fine for most of the show next week. But there's some interesting stuff about Kenobi that's out there, and we can maybe get to that next week. But in the meantime, make sure you follow Ben on social media at Ben Hart with no E. You can follow Chris at Seek3PO, and you can follow me at Dominic J25, and follow the Star Wars Underworld at the SWU. Ben's always posting cool memes and news updates and quotes of the day and classic moments on the Star Wars Underworld social media account. So again, just follow us at the SWU. We're on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, all the places that you get your social media. And make sure you check out the other Star Wars shows that are part of the Culture Slate Network, like Star Wars Culture, Ion Canon, and oh God, what's the other one?
Chatter Squadron with Tyler and Loden.
Good old Loden. He's a great sport, that Loden. All right, that's it. That does it for us here. Thank you, everybody, for listening. We'll see you all again next week. For Chris, for Ben, for all the other wonderful people at the Star Wars Underworld, my name is Dominic, and may the Force be with you. It's a wrap.